welcome to the show. We are. This is a new stream I'm running. It's called Pigeon Robot Panda.
No, you got it the wrong way around already. It's
Well-
Robot Pigeon Panda. Oh, wait, no, it's Robot Panda Pigeon.
There you go.
There you
Robot Panda Pigeon.
Yeah.
All right. My name is John Kelly. I've been on a number of streams. I've been a very big Gamergate proponent. Not as big as a lot of other people, but I've been still making the rounds. Pigeon, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Ordinary Pigeon. You might have seen me on Robin's stream. I'm also working with the Carbon-Based Gaming team to work on their new radio show. That's on Indiegogo. Please go fund it. Give us your shekels.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And sir?
go. I am Curbs101 on Twitter, and I've been fucking around the internet during Gamergate.
Sargon Stormman. You may have recognized him from. You may recognize him from being that person on Sargon's stream when Pixie Jenny came on and Sargon lost his proverbial shit.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. That's what we're only talking to one person at the moment, so we're good.
It's probably me. Oh no, it's Matthew.
Oh, never mind. And we've already got our first negative comment.
All right. And tonight we have a guest. Clinton, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Clint. A long-time gamer.
You're very quiet.
Fix your mic.
Better?
Yeah,
You're very
that's better.
quiet.
How's that? Sorry about that. I'm a long-time gamer, and the guys have brought me in to sort of like have a almost objective look at gaming, I suppose.
He's still really quiet.
Yeah, Clint, you are really
How's
quiet.
this?
You're basically non-existent, dude.
You are.
Cheers.
You are.
Wait, louder.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Still louder. You need to go louder.
Louder, dude.
Louder than this? How about this?
Yep. That's quiet as fuck.
Try put it to maximum and see if that works.
It's on maximum now.
Alright. Sorry. John,
Yes.
go to Pro. Is it Pro Studio or is it Control Room? No, go to Control Room,
Okay.
and you can boost certain people, I believe, through Control Room.
Welcome to the Spaghetti Show.
I knew this was going to be that bad. I knew it.
Let me see. Try talking now, Clinton.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
That's
better. Yeah,
that's a lot better actually. All right.
still about half the volume of everyone else, but
Yeah.
that'll have to do.
It's not
All
a
right.
conspiracy then, no?
Now
I would
back on
like-
topic.
Wait.
Clinton, why don't you introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, I'm Clint. I'm a long-time gamer, and the guys have asked me to come along, sort of like as an objective look at Gamergate as someone who's on the outside. But I do have an interest in how we're being treated by the game companies in general.
Okay, sounds good. How did you first hear of Gamergate?
I believe it was on. I believe it was in the Metro newspaper, which is a free paper in London. And it just came across as, misogynistic gamers having a go at lady developers, and yeah, that's kind of how the mass media first started to report it, and that's how I first came across it. So it was interesting to find out that that's not the whole story, and that's actually possibly a bit of disinformation upon certain interesting parties.
And go on.
No, that's what I was going to say. Just it's a bit of a rabbit's hole. You can look down. It's on the outside. On the outside, it looks like just the normal sort of guys being dicks, for want of a better word, towards ladies. But it looks like after speaking to yourself and Pigeon, it's a lot more to it, and having a look at myself and just sort of investigating things. And yeah, it's a bit of a quagmire, to say the least.
And how has your how did your position shift exactly from going from being would you say your position shifted, or did you first hear of it and then you decided to dig for more information?
Um, I think my position shifted once I spoke to you guys, because unless you're digging, unless you actually go looking for the information about Gamergate, it's not there in the mass media, if you like. I know the BBC did a pretty even sort of reporting of it, was it a couple of days ago now? That's sort of kind of settled things down, I think. But you know, it's changed. It's made me more skeptical of marketing. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. A lot of times, I think that it's a case of where. I'm sorry, am I talking over you?
No, go for it.
Okay. A lot of times, I think it's a case of where there's seems to be this alienation between gamers and the people reporting on games, and a lot of people take the word of the articles that are basically, in my opinion, slander pieces against anyone associated with Gamergate, and it's create this false impression of what the consumer revolt is really about. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I would agree entirely. If this is, as you said, a consumer revolt against the way the media is controlling information about game releases and the whole DLC saga, as well as the false ratings of games, or should I say not false, badly thought out ratings of game. Everything's 8 or 9 out of 10. Then yeah, that component of Gamergate is missing to a large extent to the general population. I think you'd get a lot more support if that message was put out there more, if you like.
Yeah. There's only so much that like we can really do because unfortunately, like, well, there's only so much we can really do because essentially there's a lot of outlets don't want to really cover the full story. They're only interested in one side of it, and they seem to be resolute in their positions on the issues. Um, what would you say is like the biggest what would you say is the biggest problem in your opinion with how the news media is basically presenting the story? And would you say that they are presenting their points in a wrong fashion, or would you say that it's more of that it's completely baseless, or would you say that there's some merits to what the media is trying to say?
I think you're kind of you're getting hit on all sides really. I've noticed in the last sort of like, if I just go around houses a bit to get to your point, there is kind of like a sea change against gamers in general, whereas 18 months, 2 years ago, gamers were the in thing. We're not the in thing anymore. We soon won't be, and we're back to being nerds again. So is that fashion shift as well, which occurs every 10 or so years, coupled with the fact that a lot of gamers are rude. A lot of people's first experience of gaming is playing Call of Duty online, and it's horrendous. I'm not just picking on Call of Duty; it's just that one game, but that's sort of like the one that I've played where I've just had the most abuse myself, and that behaviour has had a negative knock on. And I've said it before to yourself, John, that it's been a boil that's been ready to pop for quite some time. And with the history of Hackergate, how the stories got leaked, how everything came out, it's just rife for media companies, the media in general, not just media companies, but the media in general, to say, oh, it's just gamers being misogynistic again. And that's it. We're all bait then. There's, once you use that card, it's very hard to defend that position.
Well, Clinton, can I just interject one second? What is your, by definition, your term misogyny?
Okay, just playing with my wife online and just getting so much shit because she's a girl, and and the fact that she can handle herself in sort of when we play Halo or whatever it is we're playing, it then gets worse. It escalates. It becomes really nasty. I mean, there's a certain amount of banter that I give out, and I'm sure you do as well, Cerebus. I know Pigeon does. I've played with him enough times. But it gets to a point where it's just stupid, and it is misogynistic. It is sexist. It comes from that, I don't know. I hate to say it because I am a nerd, but there's a certain type of nerd that doesn't relate to women very well. They're usually younger nerds, teenagers and such, and they think that trying abuse at girls it's like when you're at school and you used to hit the girl you fancied. It's kind of like that, but to the 10th degree. And you only have to have that once, and that's it. The media have got their rope to lynch you with. So I really do want gaming to be better. I do want the media to report gaming more in the way that they report movies, for instance, the way they report other forms of entertainment. Because I do think it's a wonderful art form. I do think it's great fun, and it's a shame because it's being absolutely mullered by people chasing a buck.
Clinton, is there any chance you could fix your mic a little bit? You're coming very low. Much better.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Okay. What was I going to say? Oh yes. When it comes to so in your opinion, do you think that because gamers online will go basically engage in a verbal shitposting when they play games like Halo and Call of Duty, that that impression when people decide to check out these games and then they go to the multiplayer and then they get shouted at? Do you think that's what's causing? Do you think that's what's causing the narrative essentially in the media to be shifted in this particular direction? And do you think that's the reason why outsiders are inclined to agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's all about media manipulation. I think it's somewhere on YouTube where this young lad is filmed by his sister playing COD, and the amount of abuse he hurls down this mic at people, it's just it's off this planet. And I love a good swear. I really do love a good cussing session. I can swear with the best of them. But even I was like, Jesus wept, what are you on? Because it was just unreal. And because that got massive posts and was on news sites and on the TV shows here in the UK and a thing called RootTube where they pick the best and the worst off the internet. That's what people's persona becomes.
Okay, just Clint, I mean, out of the number of sort of gamergaters that you've sort of maybe read about or have seen interviews about, have you noticed that the demographic of the gamers that are actually involved in Gamergate are, a little bit older and not so much prone to what you term as
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is the thing. You're fighting this war where if you look at your profiles and whatnot, you all seem to be quite intellectual and intelligent and non-abusive individuals, but that's not how it's been portrayed by the mass media, and that's a shame. That needs to be addressed. How you do that, I don't know, mate.
That's all right. Okay, so you say that basically it's easy for the media to manipulate what we are because essentially there's a preconceived notion of what a gamer is, and even though that's not true in reality, the stereotype still exudes.
Exactly, and that's how the media controls everything, from the way it portrays women to people from different ethnicities, different religions. It's how it all works, and we've got a positive label with some things, and we've got a negative label. And when that when the media wants to portray something positive, then the positive label will come out, and all the positive stuff will come out about gaming. When they want someone to lynch, out comes the 14-year-old swearing at COD. And that's how media's manipulated.
Yeah. What are the when it comes to like the methods that Gamergate Consumer Revolt has taken, do you think that the methods are good, bad, or like neither or?
Which ones?
Like for instance, the way I see it, there's like kind of two fronts. There's one where we're putting out information about corruption, games, journalism, and doing more research and trying to inform people of what's going on. And then there's the other approach where what's known as Operation Disrespectful Nod, where members of the Gamergate movement will email the advertisers, and they will ask them. They will point out the allegations and the corruption, the mistrust, particularly the articles that were anti-gamer that were posted on August 28th, and some advertisers in response have left. Would you say that that's a good, bad, or indifferent to idea?
Well, you've started the ball rolling with you try to contact the journalist in question and try to get their point of view, which I know you tried to do, and that never happened. And you've done you've done what people do. As far as the Hackergate with the journalists and those particular websites in question, I think you've done. I think that's sterling work, because that shows that you care enough about the medium, your hobby, or however we want to describe it, our pastime, enough to put that effort in and try and change it for the better, hopefully. Not many people are going to do that. Most people are just like me, whatever. But you've shown the dedication to the cause, which hopefully is seen as a positive. I hope it does. I'm hoping when people look back in a few years' time at this saga, it's seen as a positive.
Yeah, I would hope so too, rather than just a negative. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, my one concern, and this has led to me getting a lot of flack by certain gamergaters, is that I think that one of the most, one of the most important things that needs to be done that hasn't been done is we need some kind of legitimate frontman for Gamergate. The problem at the moment is that it's incredibly easy to get your Brianna Woos, your Zoe Quinns, or anything on television talking about Gamergate and how it harasses women. However, it seems to be incredibly hard to find anyone reputable enough to represent Gamergate from that's nothing to do with Gamergate. It's about journalism and ethics within it. At the moment, that's something we're really falling down on, and I think we need someone with 15+ years of industry experience to actually come and talk to us about it, like to come and back for our side, essentially. Because the problem is that even if we do manage to get to a stage where that's the general conversation that's going on in the public media, the mainstream media rather, we need to get someone with the high level of legitimacy to fight against, people essentially trying to be frontmans to the way things are being done at the moment and defending, oh no, this isn't collusion, this isn't nepotism, this is just how things are, this is how all journalism works. In order to change that, we're going to need someone with awful lot of experience to back for our side, and we have a few people. One of which has, I believe, about 8 years of experience. The other one being Total Biscuit. But even those two, it's very easy to paint them into, oh no, they're just bitter. It'd be very easy to paint them into that light, even though they're not necessarily in that light. And I think that's one of Gamergate's main problems, is that because companies, well, a good example would be a game developer or a games journalist isn't going to come out and talk about the collusion, about how, you know, all your big publishers pay off game review sites or whatever because they work for game review sites, and turns out publishers' monies is very useful. Until we kind of get to a point where people until these companies start actually getting wary of Gamergate, I don't think that's going to change. And I think that's the main thing that needs to be addressed and needs to happen if we're hoping to have any progress going forward.
Clinton, would...
quite a fair point. I think that's quite a fair point. And also as well, it needs to be, because it would appear that the journalists, that a lot of the journalism around gaming is sponsored by the companies that make the games. Then really it is down to the other media outlets, for instance, the news channels, the BBC, Sky, all of those, all the regular TV shows, TV channels, if you like, to start reviewing games. To go back in the day when we used to have gaming TV shows. I know there's a channel on the cable TV that streams gaming and stuff, but there's no real reviews there. There's nothing substantial. They just seem to be the same thing repeated hour after hour. And you know, the media companies are missing a trick, because there are a lot of gamers who would like to watch a show about gaming. So that's
most definitely.
That's something that needs to be.
Sorry, Clinton. I was just going to ask, did you change your microphone when you hopped from Skype to Google Hangouts?
No, same microphone.
That's very strange. Sorry, no, I was just wondering. Because there's a lot of popping. You know, like, how close is it, like, directly next to your mouth, by any chance?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Oh, that'll be
right. Chewing it.
Ah, okay. Sorry, but yeah, continue with your point, then. I just need to ask.
No, that was my point. The mass media needs to get on board, and they'd make money out of it. That's what I can't understand. They'd make money out of it.
Yeah. I think that basically there's still this mentality that of old media to maybe avoid anything new. And I think that they're just like content staying in their own kind of circle, their own world, where they essentially have they're content staying within the old standards of media and not really looking forward to the future, and it doesn't really fit the kind of news that they want to present and point out. And a lot of times there's a case of where we're talking about these issues of Gamergate, when you have people who go on MSNBC and basically attack Gamergate as being a hate movement. It does lead into the problem of we have to tackle just mainstream media in addition to the gaming outlets. But what was it? There was something else. But yeah, I would agree that that they should be changing their ways, and they should be reporting more on games and the journalism surrounding games in particular, because then that would create a check and balance system if they were able to do that. And the fact that the media hasn't been really reporting too much, with the exception of MSM, they don't really see like a big issue around this, even though this is like an unprecedented event, controversy within not only gaming but like possibly the internet. Would you agree with that?
Certainly in gaming, this is probably it's kind of like I was thinking back to the 80s when I first got my first console and my first set of games and whatnot, and it was around about the time the second NES came out, the Super Nintendo, and all of a sudden every review was 9 or 8 out of 10, and you'd go and buy these games and some of them were really bad. And that's the moment when I thought, we don't read the reviews anymore. only buy the magazines for the cheats at the back. And just to see how that just with the Nintendo it started with, and then it suddenly just was everywhere, that you just didn't trust reviews anymore. And I'm surprised it's taken this long for this controversy to break, if you like. Because it's been sitting there for years and years and years, nigh on 20 years. That there's been something rotten in the state of Denmark. Go on.
I think, Hamlet aside, a lot of the publications that came out in those sort of eras, I mean, it sounds like exactly the same era, maybe just a little bit earlier than when I came into gaming, but a lot of those publications, you have to remember, were actually by the manufacturers. Like there was
exactly.
Yeah.
There were the Nintendo magazine and and I think Games Master and Edge are the two that sort of stayed in the UK.
Yeah.
Which are pretty good, if I've got to be honest. I'd still get the Edge.
Edge is our industry sort of trade publication. It's quite arty and it's sort of long form type articles. John, just to let you sort of know, it has been host to a lot of the controversial journalists that have come up in Gamergate at some points, like Leigh Alexander, who I think wrote for the online version. But I mean, just going back to the sort of games that you play at the moment with your girlfriend, your significant other, or your wife. Sorry, I do apologise.
It's all right.
Are they always games like first-person shooters, or what sort of level of sort of gameplay as interaction does she, prefer? What type of games does she like to play?
Well, we both are quite different in the games we actually enjoy. I mean, Shan is a massive fan of Sims and a lot of strategy games. She's, she can think, 9 or 10 moves ahead. I can think about 3 seconds. And part of what we bonded on was Halo. I think it was the first Halo. It might have been Halo 2. And from then we played together. Pretty much, we've played all the Halos from back to back, up to legendary level on most things. And Borderlands as well. We're a big fan of Borderlands. That's what we play together. And then we take turns in things like GTA and Sleeping Dogs, Saints Row. Chantal's absolutely obsessed with Saints Row. That's what we play together.
No, what was the worst sort of interaction do you think that you've ever had with individuals on these things, and how do you communicate? And do you always use the headset online, or?
Well, because we've got quite a good little gang of mates, especially on the Halo games, and with Borderlands as well, it becomes kind of like becomes a bit of a clique, to be honest with you. There's been plenty of times where, every single time we've spawned into a new map on Halo, that every single slot is taken up by one of our friends. So that's great fun. I've got to say that's some of the best nights we've had, just playing games with all our friends. The abuse has happened a few times. Chantal is very streetwise. We're both from London, so she can give as good as she gets, and she's had plenty of people rage quit after they've started on her, and she's retaliated. But as time's gone on and Xbox finally got their act together and put a report and block button, so it was easy to do, that's the route we did, because that's the only way you can, show these kids, because 90% of the time it's been children, that sort of behaviour is not on. So report and click to anyone who's getting any abuse. That's my advice.
I think that's quite important.
If the game doesn't support.
Sorry.
And if the game doesn't support that, then get hold of the game manufacturer. Let them know that you want a report and click button, report and block, because it's complete. It is abuse, and abuse is illegal, especially in the UK.
a lot of the abuse that you do see in sort of games like that is geared towards, as you said, the sort of 14 upwards type gamer. I mean, how do you feel, with regards to, people objecting towards what would be almost shit talking, basically, at this current sort of stage? I mean, that happens, but I mean, it seems that, well, even that is an issue with some people. And to that, I would just say, basically, do you have to, engage with these people? Do you feel that the microphone and headset is a, vital part of multiplayer online play?
This is the rub, If you're playing, I've noticed that because we've recently got a PS4 and we've got Destiny, and I'm the only person with a mic on. I think that's kind of how people have dealt with the shit talking. They've just turned off their mics. Well, they don't bother plugging them in at all. And it affects the gameplay because, when I'm playing with Chantel and playing with my friends, we'll put our bikes in and we call out shots, watch out, there's something behind you, whatever. You help each other along by talking. And you have a joke and you have a laugh. And that's missing. There's been a few raids on Destiny, practically all of them, and no one's talking. They just do the silly little wave and the dance at the end.
I think that might be I think that might be more to do. I mean, I'm not sure about the PlayStation 4, but with PlayStation 3, it didn't come with a what's the word? It didn't come with a a lot of the time. When you get things
cut off there. What was it you said?
I said I think the problem a lot of the time is that, like, with PlayStation exclusively, pretty much with Xbox and that, the thing is it comes packaged with a microphone. You're always going to have a headset.
So does the new one. So does the PS4.
Oh really?
The
PS4
fair enough. Comes with a headset, yeah.
No, that's
Plus
very
it's the
interesting.
same jack as a phone. I use my phone earphones to plug into the jack on the PlayStation, so it's not like you have to have a special attachment.
Oh, that's very interesting because, like, I know with PlayStation 3 there was a big problem as well, but that was mainly because you had to get like a extra Bluetooth headset, and a lot of people, you just shelled out £300 for a PlayStation. Oh, am I gonna have to spend another £30-40 just so I can talk? Like, that was even prevalent in things like Call of Duty. I know. I never personally experienced, because I think I had like Call of Duty on the Xbox or something. But I think that was one of the main problems. It is quite interesting. I think Destiny as well is a really good example of a game that hasn't fully integrated social elements very well. Like, I know that in the tower in Destiny, you can't actually communicate with people, which seems quite silly. Like, it seems like
a really...
Can. Oh, really?
You can. You can go up to people and talk to them if they accept your chat request.
Oh, okay.
So you can go, but if you're already in a party, if you're already in a fire team, or you've got friends online, you can talk to them.
Oh, that's fair enough. No, sorry, I'm quite ignorant when it comes to PlayStation 4. I think, it just seems very strange, because Destiny seems like the kind of game that you would have a microphone on most of the time. I know on PC that it's definitely dependent on the kind of game you play. A good example of this is Insurgency, which is a bit like a hyper-realistic Counter-Strike. Pretty much everyone in that game has a microphone. Whereas you play things like Team Fortress, and it seems that the majority of people that do have microphones are 12-year-olds. And it's quite strange, the disparity. I also think that a big problem when it comes to shit talking online is just that parents don't police their kids enough in this respect. I'm not saying that children, although the kids shouldn't be able to play these games even. I'm not too bothered by the 18 ratings on things like Call of Duty, for example, but I do think it's quite bad when your child's allowed to go online and, for example, call someone a faggot or something, and you're not there to really police them over that. I know from
Yeah,
my
I mean,
experience, you know, like playing Call of Duty on the Xbox, that happened all the time.
yeah, as a dad, you know, I think back to when I was, you know, my daughter's age, and I think, would I be comfortable? Would my dad be comfortable letting me watch an 18-rated film? And sometimes he was, sometimes he wasn't, and depending on the film. And there are a lot of games that I'm not happy for my daughter to play or to watch me play. Even, I mean, she's seen a bit of Sleeping Dogs, and then it got really graphic, and was like, right, okay, I'll press pause. You got to leave the room, mate.
Yep, no, you're not watching Jackie getting tortured. No, that's not happening.
Yeah, no, it was the first 5 minutes. I thought it was just going to be like a little romp in Hong Kong, but no, it wasn't. It was a John Woo
Comes
film.
out, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, it's a great storyline, and same for Bioshock, same for GTA, same for Saints Row.
Oh,
Okay,
something
so
very interesting, by the way. I know this is me chilling again, but if you're interested in Bioshock, I know for a fact that certain people for a certain internet-based radio cast are quite possibly having Ken Levine on. So keep an eye out for that.
well, just to go back to sort of one last sort of thing from me, do you think that this situation will ever change, or do you think just the people will grow out of the immaturity? You know, do you think it's fair for these people to be the representatives of gamers or you know, the whole reason that we're kind of facing this sort of situation now is because of uh, is it misogyny? Is it? I mean, or is it just immaturity? Is it?
It's misogyny through immaturity. That's what it is. It's
Is it?
immaturity.
Is it actual women hatred though? Because I mean, that's what I was trying to get earlier with regards to the definition, or is it just chauvinism? Or you know, because
It could be. It could be. It depends on. Again, it depends on the person. You know, doing what they're saying and where their motives are. And this is the problem with the internet and this sort of forum, is that you can't tell. You know, is it someone just shit talking? Is it someone trying to be funny? Is it some woman hating lunatic who's wearing his mother's skin? You know, we don't know. You don't know. You don't know who's on the end of the line. So you've got to say, as a rule, no, stop it. It's got to be.
So would you advocate for more responsibility on journalists then before they portray, you know, and looking, obviously, I mean, it sounds simplistic, but looking at both sides of a story before somebody, you know, just takes the misogyny angle as, you know, rote, basically, as, you know, as it's just, you know, the accepted, you know, party line, as it were.
Yeah, again, this is purely down to the management of the facts and the management of how it's portrayed in the mass media. I'm glad to see you guys are coming back and saying it's not about misogyny and not about chauvinism. I do feel you've got an uphill struggle because it's easy for the media to go down a certain line, and it's easy to have a villain. And like I said, the video games aren't fashionable at the moment. They're coming out of fashion, and you know, it's a hard thing to call because the journalists in question who are, if they are trying to manage this situation as a negative to try and detract from the fact that they've been caught out, it's hard. You know, I wish I had answers for you guys to make things better because the gaming industry is seriously, I think, is taking their fans for granted at the moment because it's not really the journalists, you know, fault, if you like. I spoke to John about it the other night that a lot of these guys, that's how they earn their money, is by just reviewing these video games. And the industry have set up a system where
you have to be privy to
they have to be. It's just they're paying for it. If someone's paying you to do something, you do it.
Right.
And if you're not, and if the game industry in general isn't held to account, then it's just going to keep on happening.
On that note, what is your opinion on paid reviews? That is, when a company pays a journalist to write a review. Do you think that practice should be abolished, or do you think it should be regulated, or do you think there's nothing wrong with that?
It's hard because it's like the old exclusive. Whatever magazine would have the first look at a game back in the day when I was in the playground, and we'd all know that this would be like a sponsored hit, but you'd all want to hear the news about this next new game, whatever it is. I think it needs to be up front. I think this needs to be come underneath the tagline sponsored article. Whatever. Just have a hashtag sponsored article. So the punters know it's a marketing piece rather than a review. It's an advert, not a review.
Most definitely. The big problem
that's what it is, because it's just an advert, and there's a muddy waters of what is an advert, what is a review, what is an article, and I dread to think what sort of lawyers would do with this. They'd probably run it for years and years and years.
Okay. Also related to this subject when it comes to Gamergate is this perceived assault on the gamer identity, based on a bunch of articles written on August 28th that I mentioned earlier. Do you think that there is an inherent problem with the term gamer, and if it, do you think that this is the case, that the journalists are attacking their audience, and if and why would anyone really have a problem with that term? Because that one really confuses me.
Yeah, it confused me as well, because I was all right with being a gamer until this today when I was going through some posts and stuff. Yeah, it's bizarre that it's bizarre on one hand because it's happening to us as gamers, it's happening to us, but on the other hand, it's not, because it's kind of like a circle of fashion as well. Because 2 years ago, I went into a sports shop and there were T-shirts saying "Geek and Proud." Now, I am a geek and I am proud, but you'd never get me wearing a T-shirt saying "Geek and Proud." It was very much the in thing 2 years ago. Fashion's changed. We ain't the in thing anymore. So we're gonna get a certain amount of flack, and because we're so big now, because so many people are playing games, so many my mum's playing games now. My mum's a massive fan on her iPad. This should not happen. This is like when I walk into her house and she's sitting there playing, a game on her iPad, asking me to get her to the next level. This is complete bizarreness for me. But there she is. She's playing a game. Everybody's a gamer now. So to turn around and attack gaming is, you're attacking my mum. You're attacking my little daughter. You're attacking all her friends at school. You're attacking your future customers. You're attacking me. And it's gonna blow over. This whole thing of gamers are dead. Goodbye gamers. It's gonna be chip paper tomorrow, as we say in England. The headlines are soon lost. But what the Gamergate movement, I hope, can continue to do is address these consumer issues that we have. Because not only is it the collusion of the journalists around, gaming and whatever, it's also the fact we're getting ripped off on DLC, on games that are not finished, and you have to pay another £10, which is like $18, to get the end of the game, or to get, to make it so it's a full game.
Didn't Destiny recently? Yeah, with Destiny, didn't they recently announce the expansion pack to it?
Yeah, the expansion pack is already on the disc, Luke.
Yeah.
This is breaking news. The expansion disc is already on the disc. Why haven't I got those extra levels? Why am I sitting here waiting for them to release a date and then want more of my money?
Did you know that people have actually found ways to break the current levels to get into some of those maps as well?
Fair play to them. But yeah, it's all of that. It's the constant sort of like, pander to it. I don't buy DLC as a rule. The games I've bought DLC for are Saints Row. I'm going to name them: Saints Row, Sleeping Dogs, Borderlands 2, and probably the new Borderlands when it comes out, because those were DLCs that were brilliant, and Fables, and the Fables franchise as well, up to Fable 3, because the DLC was good, and it took a while to come out as well. It wasn't out on the same day the game was released.
It was more in the nature of an expansion pack. All those games you mentioned, it was more like old school expansion packs where actually added, an 8 to 10 hour long storyline and new areas and things. Whereas DLC these days is often
a few skins or something.
Yeah.
It's not even new weapons in some cases. Yeah, it's not even new weapons.
And as someone who likes the challenge of a game, I don't want cheap weapons. All right, okay, with the exception of Saints Row with some of their funny weapons, I like the idea I have to build up to get to the good sword, because the good sword will help me beat the villain at the end. But now the best sword you get if you do stuff online, and all of a sudden it's in your inventory, and the game is just a waste of time because it's just button bashing. There's no technique to it, and it's a shame. It's a shame because they must be making a lot of money to keep on doing it, because they're knocking off their fan base quite a lot. A lot of these developers.
Would you think it would be a very pro-consumer stance for journalists to take a more skeptical look about these directions the industry is heading in with when it comes to DLC?
Yeah. I think you do need to be critical. Don't necessarily have to be skeptical, but you do have to be critical. With things like Borderlands 2, the DLC of that has been brilliant. Has been enriching the game. Myself and my wife have played that game for hours and hours and hours. We're on something like the 20th playthrough, and we've got most of the DLC. We've got most of the playable, the levels and the maps, and it just enriches the experience, and it makes for that franchise to be stronger. Whereas other games, and I hate to say it, Assassin's Creed, because I love Assassin's Creed, I really do think it's a great concept and a great game, but the DLCs just become ridiculous, and I just feel robbed, so I don't buy it anymore. And I think that message needs to go out. Just don't buy it. If you're going to get robbed, don't buy it. And I think part of what journalists should say is that this isn't really worth £10 or however much it is in dollars. And we got to stand up for your right. You know what I
mean? What would you say about the specific scandals that are often highlighted in Gamergate? Do you think that those specific issues are for instance, the allegations against Nathan Grayson and ZQ, and also the Game Journal Pros email list and the Patricia Hernandez cases? Do you think that these specific cases are founded in good, solid evidence? Do you think that might be onto something, but they need more investigation, or do you think that they're little conspiratorial and should be dismissed?
It's weird. I found a meme the other day where someone's telling me about the conspiracy theories about the government, and I'll just reject them out of hand because they're talking about UFOs? Or have I been conditioned not to accept these things by government forces? And it kind of in sort of like this sort of realm, you know, because it is there solid evidence. I think with all these allegations, you need a journalist who isn't anything to do with gaming to come in and just blow the lid off it. You need an investigative journalist, if there's anyone listening. You needed to come in and expose it for what it is, because then you can hit the reset button. Everyone can sit, right, okay, everyone's been outed, whatever has happened. Then you move on. Then you know, we get to rebuild how we get our games delivered to us. Because at the moment, it just, from my perspective, and this is only my perspective, that the gaming industry has all the cards. They have this fantastic marketing departments that, you know, not only are brilliant marketing departments that make me want to buy every video game I see, but they also have the journalists and the websites that are about gaming, and they're sponsoring them. So you need an outside element to come in. That's what I think would help.
Okay. Oftentimes in Gamergate, the accusation that the games industry has been basically absorbed by a culture of either left-leaning or even to go as far as to say social Marxist attitudes in the game sphere, like complaining, for instance. Often an example highlighted is the review for Bayonetta 2 by Polygon was often blasted for like spending half the article talking about what the character looks like as opposed to the content of the game. Do you think that I'm going to call it Bay Area culture, do you think that these opinions are basically trying to push an agenda, or do you think that gamers are basically what is the word I'm looking for? Essentially complaining that these voices share similar opinion, and it's not really as big a problem as they're saying it is.
Well, Bayonetta is a tricky one, because for what it is over here, I think we've spoken to. I've said this before somewhere, but what it is here in Western eyes is something completely different in Japan. In Japan, that is feminism in its core. You know, the cutesy, I can't remember what it's called now, the cutesy thing that the Japanese girls do. Lolicon, thank you, Pigeon. It's something to do to repulse men away from them. Over here, it's seen as titillation. That article in particular about Bayonetta just did the massive disservice to Bayonetta, because if you've ever played that game, and if you like button bashing, that game is solid. It is wonderfully made. It's artistically off its head, and I'll be the first one to say that. And I do like the surreal, and it is exceptionally surreal. But just on a mechanical level, the physics of the game, it is incredible. It is a wonderful, wonderfully well-made game that you expect from, I think it was Sega, isn't it? You have to double check me. But yes, and to go on about how Bayonetta looks does a massive disservice to that game in particular. Whether or not, you know, there is we see, the problem is with gaming, we've got a history that mainly it's been, when it first came out back in the day when I was a kid, it was pretty much boys played video games, girls had dolls, and that's a horrible way of putting it. But that's how video games were sold. First of all, they were sold as family entertainment, and then they were sold to boys and to young adults, young male adults. And that perception has stayed, I think, over the years. That's something that we have to get rid of. You know, you do need to invite girls onto shows like this. You do need to, sorry, not girls, women. You need to invite women onto the shows and stuff like this. You do. There needs to be a strong female voice for Gamergate to show that it's not about misogyny. It's not about chauvinism. It's about the issues surrounding the gaming marketplace. Sorry, John. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it did. It was more about like yeah, I think it did. But my question was like, do you think that like I think the best way to put it, like to rephrase my question before, because it was a bit complicatedly worded. Do you think that there is an ideology being pushed by the people, like, for instance, the writer who wrote that article on Bayonetta? A lot of people have cited that, like, the Gamers Are Dead article links back to something a feminist wrote, basically decrying the term gamer. There's also been a lot of lately. There's also been a lot for like the past 4 or 5 years. There's been a lot of more. I don't want to say progressive. I don't think that's the correct term here. There's been a lot of pushback against things that were like kind of strictly standard in video games. Like, for instance, like they often have been very critical of how women look like in games and how they're portrayed, and whether or not this might be politically correct or not, or something like that. Do you think that? I'll go for it.
I think there's a good point to say that there has been a lot of you know, for want of a better word, porny sort of looking women in gaming. That doesn't necessarily need to be there. You know, we got the is it Dead or Alive with the boob bouncing on or off, and you know, we can't deny that didn't happen. I'm trying to think of there was this sort of like a fantasy game where all the women were basically warriors, but they were just walking around in bikinis, and you know, fighting dragons. You wouldn't wear a bikini to fight a dragon. I know it's going to be warm, but still, and they'd be walking across the tundra and in a bikini. And the same thing in Skyrim as well. And I love Skyrim, but just on a level, just to make it that little bit more realistic. Why is, you know, one of the coolest female characters in a bikini? A fur bikini as well. How itchy must that be? Do you know what I mean? It's just, it's just honestly, there is a pre-tendency for game developers and gamers to pander to this sort of like ideal that we're all 14 years old and we haven't got porn. When, you know, it doesn't need to be like that. It doesn't need to be so immature.
But do you feel that with those sort of immature games, the number of mature games sort of balances it out? I mean, all of these do have sort of like core audiences. I mean, fighting games have always, you know, had that kind of less of a restriction due to the sort of fantasy nature of the environments usually that they're fighting in. I mean, Dead or Alive has become kind of a parody of itself in the fact that most people know, that they're going to buy the game, they're going to see the jiggle physics, but you know, the game I still base the last Dead or Alive game I base on its actual playability, and it was pretty awful in comparison to other fighters like Soul Calibur. So you know, but even as a male, you know, it's more the mechanics of the game, if you're looking for it, that you're going to be not just the titillation. That just seems to be, you know, if you're out for something, you're out for those kind of things. Sometimes are secondary, really. You know.
It's like you said, it's floss to try and sell the game, especially with DOA. I do think that, you know, things like Skyrim, that was totally unnecessary. I can't remember the character's name. She's in the Hunters Guild.
I know who you mean.
Yeah, as a wicked character. But why is she dressed like that? You know. And
the red-haired woman now.
And you just think you've done such a wonderful job with the rest of the game, how everybody's dressed and how everybody looks and the feel of the game, and all of a sudden you've got this, barbarian lady figure from Conan the Destroyer coming back on the screen, and you're like, dude, really, we've grown up from this. And the problem is those little things get picked up by the journalists that John was just mentioning, and they run with it. And so they go, see, look, one of the best games that's ever been made, and it's all just a titty fest. And it's not. It's just this one character in this world, and you could play that game for weeks on end and never meet her.
And also, I like one of my main problems with I'm quite interested in terms of like cultural critique of video games. But one of the things that always really annoys me is that you're directly influencing a lot of careers, and this is based a lot by how the game industry is set up by injecting that into your reviews. Like a good example is Metacritic, right? Metacritic is used now. It is an industry standard for a lot of the time bonuses. A good example of this is Fallout New Vegas. Pretty much everyone I know who likes the modern Fallout games really loved Fallout New Vegas. And the reason that, was it Obsidian? Or was it Monolith? I can't remember. I think it's Obsidian Studios. The reason that they never made a follow-up game to Fallout New Vegas is because they were 1 point off on Metacritic, 1 point off from getting a massive bonus from their producers. The game got an 89. If it got a 90 overall from all these game reviewers, all these different game reviewers, they would have got a huge bonus, and they probably would have had the funds to then continue on the Fallout IP. And because of that 1 point bonus, or like that one, they didn't quite get that 1 point. It's not going to happen. And that's kind of one of my main concerns when it comes to cultural critiques in video game reviews, is that you're not looking at the merits of the game. If it's sexism into terms of the story, you can make a strong argument for that, and that I don't mind as much. If it's a story-based game and every female character's like very stereotypical, but when it's nothing to do with the writing and it's nothing to do with the mechanics of the game, I feel that it's quite disingenuous for the reviewers you're essentially affecting other people's careers, and not based on the merits of their game. You're just taking the one specific emotional response that you had to it, and you're affecting their salaries a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, because going back to the DOA example, for instance, the mechanics, the gameplay, the fighting, the load times, for instance, were points which made the game in some cases almost unplayable for me. I'm not, but if I was to comment particularly on the skimpy outfits or whatever of some of the characters, and remember even some of the males are bare-chested in that game as well, so I think there is a disproportionately high amount of women to male ratio, but they're equally on show.
I think that there should have been equality in that game. I think the guys' junks should have had jiggle physics as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, maybe they were lacking testicles. Who knows? But I wouldn't stifle a game's. I wouldn't go for censorship, Clinton. It is somebody's. If we're going for that art form, as people are saying, games are art, and that's a larger discussion. I still wouldn't, provide censorship. And obviously, there are rating systems that are.
Yeah,
that one's not.
I'm not arguing against the rating system. I'm not arguing for censorship.
Yeah.
What I am arguing is about is for game developers to realise that their audience has grown up. That even the kids. I mean, all right, we've done a few teenage bashing here on this show at the moment, but there are most of the kids that I know, the young adults who I know, are very engaged, are very articulated, are very clued in, and they're as sick to death of this as we are, and they've only been playing games for a blink of the eye compared to me. So if they're getting fed up with it, I'm truly sick to my high teeth of it. And it's the subtle unnecessariness. I mean, you got things like Hitman Absolution. I'm a massive Hitman fan. I was glad they were going to do another game, but that game was just so unnecessary. There was so many things wrong with that game just on a sexist note that just spoiled it for me.
Can you highlight examples, for instance?
I can highlight a very good example.
Just a heads up. We're almost reaching in the hour. Yeah, so just finish.
Okay.
Let me.
Just this.
Go for it.
Yeah, there was an assassination attempt on Hitman about halfway through the game when you're in a motel, and the assassins, for some unbeknownst reason, are a group of nuns, sexy nuns in BDSM gear. And at that point, you're just kind of going, wait, you fucking what? What? You know.
I mean, to bar that, I mean that was just eye-on ridiculous. But the one thing that I hated, I was replaying it to achievement hunting, and I got to the stripper level. Now, there are ways where the best, and I think the highest scoring way through that level is to shoot the prostitute and the guy while you're hiding behind a two-way mirror. I didn't do that. I don't like doing that. But while I was exploring, I found a lever, and I pulled the lever, and a disco ball dropped on the stripper's head and killed her. And it was horrible. I think I got an achievement for it as well, and I'm like, what? That's so unnecessary. You know, it was just so sort of puerile. And
it's funny they do. They do become parodies almost of the violence and because I mean the Anita example that she gives of Hitman is wrong, because they don't have to kill those prostitutes or strippers in that area because it's all about evasion and trying not to be detected. So it's quite interesting to have those examples. Why weren't those examples flagged by Anita? It's just kind of like
she didn't play it properly. She didn't play it. She just rolled through it. Oh, okay, let's tear it to shreds. And that game should have been teared to shreds because it had such a rich history, and it was a reboot, and they blew it.
They really
blew
did.
It hard. And especially when you've got games that have come out since that have rebooted. Just off the top of my head, Tomb Raider, which was fantastic. That's how you should do a woman character.
Do you feel that a possibility? Do you feel that a strong, like for me, I feel like a strong possibility where you get very poorly written female characters, and generally like there are a lot of sexist undertones in a lot of games with this. It's because a lot of the writers for video games aren't necessarily writers first and gamers second. A lot of the time they are gamers first, and then they watch Star Wars, and then they went, okay, I'm going to start writing about video games. And then these become a lot of the time.
I don't think so.
You know?
I don't think so. A lot of gamers, a lot of game writers are writers in their own right, and I think a lot of it is a producer. You can have people interfering. It's not like a book or it's more like the movie business where people will say, oh no, I have this idea as well, we're going to put this idea in, I'm paying the check. And a lot of these things are collaborate. I can never say this word, sorry.
Collaborate?
They're a calibration. They're a calibration of lots of different people. With lots of
do you mean collaboration?
That's the
calibration
word.
is something.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. That's what I do on the car.
All right.
Yeah,
it was great having you on, Clinton.
Time up.
But we're out of time for this segment, so I actually would want you to come on the show again, because I remember you had a lot to say about like writing of female characters and like some very good critiques on what I think is better examples of sexism in games than something like Neo Sarkeesian would have to say. So if you come again, I'd appreciate that.
No problem, anytime.
All right.
Thank you very much, Clinton.
Cheers.
All right. If people want to follow you, do you want to put your Twitter handle out there?
Yeah, it's at HyperNebo. If you could stick it on the site, that'd be great.
Yeah. It's also in the description below. So if you want, follow him on Twitter, and have a good one, Clinton.
Cheers. Take care, John. Bye, Pigeon. Bye, Cerebus.
Bye.
See ya. John, you've put a complete rando Twitter. That's my name on Twitter. That's
What?
not my Twitter handle.
Oh, dang it.
You dropped
Let
the
me-
spaghetti again. What the fuck?
All right, guys, we've been having some massive technical, issues
This is
at
what
the
happens
moment.
when you given a Merifat the controls of a Google Hangout. This is what.
Oh. This is what happens when pasta drops everywhere.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is my first time doing a stream, hosting a stream, so forgive me.
Not so easy, is it? Mm.
No.
No.
All right, let me get your Twitter handle and fix that.
Okay,
Who's
I'll put it
By the
on.
way, sir, did you drop the spaghetti when you had to message Adam Baldwin when he messaged you? Were you almost like,
It's very hard to advise someone who's trying to use a mobile app on a phone that you don't have to call in. Yeah, it was difficult. So.
I feel for you.
Are we? Did we have?
We have another guest.
Yes.
Henry.
Yes, Henry. Shall I send him a link to the? Have you sent him a link, or shall I?
I'll send him a link. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to discuss.
So, sir, what is it? One of my main things when it comes to video games and kind of the writing of them, and a lot of the times the characters, like the female characters, are for. I do just put that down to bad writing. Like it's the same thing with movies. I feel that gamers do appreciate good writing, and games like Sleeping Dogs is a good example, which have very good writing, in my opinion, for an open world game. You did have some strong female villains, much like in real life. A lot of the strongest female villains, there are a lot of strong female villains. A good example is the Crane twins. Everyone knows the Crane twins from. Is it East London? East London.
Yeah.
Yeah, East London. And they were the gangsters of that time. No one, everyone knew they were gangsters, but no one could prove they were gangsters. But the thing is that after their mother died, their life went to shit because they were all of a sudden in charge. Because during the time that she was alive, she was the head of that family. It was a matriarchy. She was giving them orders from a little shitty kitchen somewhere in East London, and they would go out and do as she said.
God, I hope it's East London. I can't even remember if it was.
Or whatever she was. It doesn't. Crane's dead anyway. Fuck it. It's fine. Actually, I don't know. Are they alive?
No.
Right. I invited Henry onto the stream. Hopefully, he will get that DM and he will come in. Pigeon.
You really haven't organised your guests. Come on. Get better.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Pigeon, you want to discuss more than let me rephrase that. Pigeon, it was your suggestion to invite him. So, this is like for a not your shield sort of thing.
I didn't suggest it. You were just like, oh, we're getting him on because the problem with you, my friend, is that I was going to be doing a radio show.
Okay. Henry, how are you doing?
I'm just fine.
All right. Do you want to introduce yourself for the audience?
I'm Henry from Finland, also known as Sister Jihi. And what else would you like me to say?
All right. Well, we're doing this show to get different perspectives on the issue and what is on of Gamergate, yeah, and maybe and related topics. So, how did you first hear of Gamergate, and how did you start getting involved?
I was in at the very core around the conspiracy times. I followed from the sidelines, but when the Gamergate started by itself, I jumped right in. I went through Twitters. I visited the 4chan, the burger boards, but then the great exodus happened, and I joined in more at the 8chan side, and ever since that, I've been part of it, and I've been expanding my knowledge on it.
Okay.
Are you still on 8chan currently, or?
Let's just say lately the attitudes at 8chan has been turning quite sour. Like everyone is just chill and everyone is basically conspiring against them, and I found that
it's an echo chamber, isn't it? That's point.
it has turned into an echo chamber, and I found it to be have a more
Uh,
healthy environment to be on streams and on Twitter.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to see if that was because I mean that's my impression when I do visit 8chan at the moment, that it's kind of lost its way from how it originally had, fantastic sort of conversations and voices, and then it just slowly started. But do you feel that that's been due to maybe an influx of or whether it's been co-opted, or or is it just run its course and become a parody of 4chan's V?
Well, I think it's well, considering that 8chan board, the GG board, is basically the center of those who are not in the let's just say the outside environment, who goes around on the streams and the Twitters and connected that way. 8chan board is an excellent site for discussion, but later on, when the opposition realized this, they started to infiltrate into the ranks, and you can see it there, like they have applied CAPTHA and everything like that, and all the news sites and news that reported about 8chan. But I think the intentions are good, but basically it has turned into such a shitstorm you can't see really far there anymore.
Would you say that that's down to third party, or would you say it is the?
I believe it, so yeah.
Yeah, I think it's unfair to sometimes criticise all the SJWs, as it were, for these so-called infiltrations.
Chill.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah. Come at me, and shout shill. But I think I think if there were more potentially SJWs, there might be more constructive sort of dialogue, basically. But it's not. It just seems to be third parties stirring the shit at the moment. So
True.
Maybe more moderation.
Well, that's the issue, because the ideals of 8chan are based on the lack of moderation. That basically anything that doesn't violate the rules or the global rules gets to stay, and that adds into the shitstorm.
What is the major appeal to sites like 8chan and 4chan? Like, what puts it like, say, compared to Twitter or your standard message board? What advantages and disadvantages does it have?
You need to explain this because John is Amish and he doesn't.
Yeah.
Well,
he does not into technology.
That active on 8chan, really, on the GG boards at least. I mainly stay around the Finnish boards and art and music, but the anonymity is an excellent tool, because there you live by your idea. If the idea you give out is good, it will survive. But basically, you cannot use your name to boost your idea. It's purely on the strength of the idea. A great man's idea can be buried really quickly, or a lesser man's can be brought up to the forefronts of the people.
Okay. And with this new, what do you think that 8chan creates an echo chamber because of like the influx of people that we've been getting there, or do you think it's because of or do you think it's because of or do you think it has to do with how they, or do you think it's something else?
Well, I think it created an echo chamber because it was a safe haven for the pro GGs, and I'm quite sure it's a minority there who are the hardliners yelling shills and everything, but it's, let's just say 8chan's GG is the other end of the right, means like the radical spectrum for us. The most radical of our pro GGs are there, and you just need to fit somewhere in the middle ground.
Okay. Do you think that there's any way that 8chan could, have more of a healthy discourse like we do on streams, and somewhat more so on Twitter? Or do you think that? What?
Some streams.
Well, yeah, some streams. Or do you think that having like this echo chamber sort of situation in 8chan is okay?
Um, well, the only people who can change how agents, the boards work are the people who use it. The community has to change. And unfortunately, I have seen that if you try to change how the boards view things, you need to give an influx of other information. And if it starts to go against their views, they go in the hardline panic mode that you are shilling, you are trying to change us, you are trying to co-opt us. But basically, we need people to have a proper conversation there. But the fact is that it's not an inviting environment. Example, what you said, is it a new fact or whatever they call them? I'm new to the whole Chan culture, and since I don't know the ins and outs, I get two replies: extremely hostile or extremely friendly and helpful. And I can believe that people tend to remember the negatives, so when you get a hostile greeting, you just want to get the fuck out, and I don't blame you.
Okay. Do you think that that's something that, so you're saying essentially that to correct this mindset basically has to be done on a person-to-person responsibility level?
Well, if you think about what's the meta of community, it's the people who create a community, and when the people start to change, the community start to change. In a way, we need to, example, if it came to true that there is something that we've been totally wrong about, we need to present that evidence in a way that they will accept it, and let's just assume that it is a fact. And if they disregard those facts, then we are no better than the other side. But I believe that if we give them the evidence, they will change. And I'm not saying that they are right or wrong in some things, but I believe that giving information and the discussion a chance will change them.
Okay. What was it? There was. Hold on. No, yeah, I think I just did. Anyway, so would you say that it's wise or unwise at this point to use 8chan as a source for like Gamergate, community happenings, or even interaction with people who might not be within the community, or maybe even be against the consumer revolt? Would it be a good idea for them to go to like 8chan to have a discussion?
I think sadly, at its current state, it's not the healthiest environment, because if you give a slightly disagreeing viewpoint, you get basically really hostile response. But unless, like, if you want to know about the boycotts and who you should email or send letters to, it is an excellent resource, because I can just go there, and if I kind of find the archive or the boycott of the day, they will provide it to me. But that is assuming you know what you're asking. Otherwise, I would recommend the more, basically from social media, from Twitter, but the issue is that you don't know the people you should contact. That's an issue.
It does, yeah, no, I get exactly what you mean. It does feel, I feel like if 8chan, if 8chan's Gamergate board rather, because most of the other boards are quite funny, I feel, but like with Gamergate, we have kind of got to this point where a lot of people, I feel they're quite sick of Gamergate. They feel quite tired, and they're very emotional about the entire thing, because we've all invested so much time into it. And so, you know, if you give any kind of dissenting opinion or anything that may be considered criticism to the movement, people do get upset. And I could only imagine how bad it would be. I'd imagine it'd be even worse if these same group of people did have their own subreddit. Reddit's, like, if you've ever been on Reddit, Reddit's even worse when it comes for pushing a certain viewpoint because of the point scoring system. And if the Gamergate board and 8chan was to have that, my fucking god.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I used to use Reddit, but I just simply got sick of the circle jerk, because I used to be active on the esports and philosophy boards, and there the certain, let's just say, even the philosophy boards started to get this certain narrative, a certain viewpoint, what were acceptable things to discuss and how. I just got sick of it because basically they did not reward good argumentation. They rewarded agreeing opinions.
Yeah. Either hostile rebuttals to other people that had a possibly different opinion, or just the party line. It's kind of like the main problem with Reddit, is that the best way to market yourself on Reddit and the best way to become a popular person on Reddit is to ride the circle jerk waves, essentially. Like it doesn't matter what board you're going on. Like StarCraft, for example, I really love watching StarCraft 2 online. Like all the tournaments and things. But every week there's a new popular opinion that's being pushed, and I'm not in a shadowy cabal kind of way, but I mean as in someone makes a really good point, and then everyone else goes, "Oh, I didn't think of that. Let's all take this point. Let's all, and for the rest of the week." There was a really good mod for StarCraft 2, which mixed in some of the Brood War units and things, and it rebalanced a lot of things. And for a week, it was shit hot. As in, someone immediately hosted a tournament and made a lot of money from it for this mod. Because these people were able to identify kind of these trends. And the thing is it's so transparent as well. You can tell what's going on so easily. If you have that dissenting opinion, if you have just a contrary opinion rather, you're just so quickly poo-pooed out of the communities.
Yeah, that's true. That's an interesting, because I have read a scientific article that measured how long other people's opinions affects yours, and it's about 2 weeks.
Yep.
If I say to you that you're wrong, and you say, okay, I'm wrong, about 2 weeks later you say that I was right.
That makes perfect sense, to be honest with you. I could definitely believe that.
Well, on that note, in my opinion, the best way to combat that would be to remain skeptical.
Oh yes, I'll always be skeptical. Like I said, nothing is true until it's proven to be true, and then it's slightly suspicious. Because I'd say, you can say that water is not wet even if it's proven to you, but there are certain fundamentals that cannot be disagreed with, for example, in case of math and things like that. In philosophy, we have certain fundamentals that you simply, if you disagree with, you fail to understand the point of the exercise.
Exactly, yeah. No, I definitely agree. What other questions do we have for you, Henry, today?
Henry, you are someone who is asexual, right?
Yes.
Okay. What is? Would you
briefly elaborate?
All right. A few questions about that. Would you say that because you are asexual, would that give you do you think that you would ever be in a situation where you could use the not your shield stance on something?
Oh, a lot. The antis and social justice warriors general have basically hijacked my identity and used it there only to cause, because I went around Tumblr. I like Tumblr for many things. There's good art blogs and music, and I like to go those, but sometimes from those art communities you find these oddball social justice things, and then I usually just for the curiosity go around watching, and I have noticed that many people say that I'm an asexual, but here is a little hook that I can use to escape from the identity to act as a normal person with sexual drive. And it's disgusting because since, I don't know, 2011, I have not been taken seriously. People don't even know what I am anymore. And it hurts. It's horrible. And I want it to stop. I want people just to realize what it, I get really emotional about that, but either you are or you are not. Either you are on the spectrum or you are not. It's quite simple. Either you get there or you don't. And It's just the what then again, what is asexuality, what is being an ace, and well, sadly it comes to it's a neurological thing, and it's either you lack the drive to a certain extent or not at all, and it's a neurological thing, not physiological, not psychological. And I wanted to stop. I'm sick of it, and because of this, um, also I've been basically excluded from our discussion. Like I'm not part of LPGT movement. Aces are not welcome. They're basically, well, we are welcome, but we don't belong into the movement.
It isn't a core part of it. Yeah.
Well, there's the LPGTA and LPGT Plus that accepts us in a way, but those aren't, let's say, a major movement. And because of this social justice stuff, we get excluded, and they speak for us. They think they can speak for us when they barely belong into the group, and because of that, both sides ignore us. Like in Gamergate, when I have tried to get on the Not Your Shield stuff and such, like I came to the Robin stream and I educated you about this, and it just showed you how little people at the end of the day know about us. And
somebody in the chat just asked, what is the identity that they're exploring, that they're exploiting rather. So could you explain it for the chat and what it means to you?
Do you mean how they exploit it, or what it means, or what do you mean?
Yeah, your asexuality. The chat's essentially asking because I'm sure they just didn't hear. So it is you're asexual, correct?
I'm asexual, and I lack the. It's hard to describe because you need to be able to get into my worldview. I lack the fundamental desire and need for sex.
Yes.
It's hard to describe, but
well, I'd imagine it's quite easy. If I feel one way of describing it is like, for example, chat. If you were to, for example, a fetish that you don't understand, like for me that'd be a foot fetish. I understand where they're coming from, but I just don't find feet attractive. Now just expand that to pretty much every single thing that you could find possibly sexually attractive. It's just not it's not a factor within your life that you particularly consider. Would that be a fair way of putting it?
Yeah, basically, let's just say my mind is more preoccupied with other things than sex, and it's basically the issue is because it's a core fundamental of biology. It's a necessary normal drive, and I'm lacking it, and the reason I'm lacking it, well, something went wrong in my brain. I'm willing to accept that, but that might make me unpopular among the sexual minority groups. But I'm willing to believe that something is different in my brains. Why is it? And it's just basically, let's just say, the vibrance of colors in world, they are not presented to me. I can see them, but I don't recognize them. It's hard. It's really hard to explain.
No, I think you did a very good job because do you feel that a lot of these kind of there's no nice way of putting it, social justice archetypes. How do you feel like a lot of these social justice archetypes have exploited your sexuality in order to kind of further their particular goals and ideas?
Well, they use it as basically as an argumentation tool. Like, I can say about this, about the other gender, because I don't view them in a sexual manner, and my identity is a tool for them to avoid uncomfortable discussion or realizations. And imagine if somebody comes to you and says that you are just a tool for me. It hurts. It hurts a lot.
I definitely can sympathise with that. It's quite disgusting. Did you know that this will probably disgust you slightly? But did you know that Anita Sarkeesian considers herself asexual?
Well, I can't say for sure. She might be not.
Well, we can't speculate on someone's sexuality, but
it doesn't disgust me until she uses that as an argumentation tool. That crosses the line.
No, that makes perfect sense. What's your so when you got into the movement? At what point did you? What is your expectations for Gamergate in your perfect world? In your hypothetical perfect world, what would be the end goal of Gamergate for you?
End goal will be the system that we currently have for these basically these scores that measure, because let's just say I have always wanted to do a game. I have had few people, I have done few game design like 48 hours and stuff like that, and I have had a nightmare my whole like to say since I started to think about doing game development of that I offend someone and they are going to ruin my life, my career, everything. And in these nightmares, I often end up doing an escape by suiciding. And this was all because as some journalist in some big site decided to misrepresent me. And it sounds insane, but that is no longer a fiction. That can happen. Your life, your reputation can be all ruined unless you please these journalists. And it's not a world in which I want to live in.
I can definitely understand that. And John, I believe you have a question on from the chat.
Yes, someone in the Matt actually asked if you can identify sexuality in people or characters. Like,
yes. It's basically, well, let's just say if a character is basically, I said it like this once. There has been no character in fiction that I know of that has been asexual. They have just been written to lack any sexual characteristics, and it's quite easy to see in the behavior. Well, let's just not in the behavior, but in the way they take the damn language barrier. Attitude, certain types of attitudes and views, because what I have noticed, I cannot say this is all, but with the other aces that I have noticed, that we kind of see past all that. We see past the sex in, let's say, media and behavior, and we kind of realize how it all works and how subconscious it is, and it colors your behavior greatly. And I have yet to see a character that will be fully realized to have these views, because I understand it. It's hard to come, and I don't know. I wouldn't recommend writing a character like that because I think nobody would sympathize with them. But I can see these things like, okay, maybe it tells more about the designer, but in the behaviors, let's just say. Opposite of asexual character would be an extremely human character. We can show, like, we can act. Have a hard time forming my thoughts about this, but it shows, and if you know what you are looking for, you can see it. If that makes any sense, do ask if you want me to correct anything like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I guess you're saying that basically there's characters in fiction that are written as with asexual characteristics but are not explicitly asexual, and that you can also tell when a character is actually acting sexual and when they're not.
Yes, I can see it. Let's just say it's kind of, I don't know, I can't jump into the brains of other people, but I can see it's quite obvious to me when, example, the slightest form of flirting is added into the text of the game or the media. It just jumps out of me because I realize that I don't think like that at all, and I understand. I see the behavior. To others, it is normal. To me, it's not, and it's just. There are many characters that are fully realized and colored that I just cannot get into. I just can't recognize as them, because basically the fact that you don't write a sexuality to a character doesn't mean that they are asexual, but damn, it's quite hard for me these thoughts. I'm thinking in Finnish and translating them to English. But
Okay.
yeah, it's a different thing.
Okay, so you can recognize it, but you don't really like feel attraction to it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I can imagine sympathizing with them, but I cannot sympathize with them because I have nothing to reference their behavior on in my life.
Okay. Cerebus, you've been quiet. Do you have anything?
No.
Okay, just checking. What was it? There was another question I had, I think. We kind of skipped over like the news segment for the show. I did want to do for the pre-show. I did kind of drop the spaghetti on that, and that had to get canned. So since I figured that maybe like in the next part of the segment, next half hour, we could go over like some of the David Pakman interviews.
By the way, just to let you know, Henry. Well, I would have interjected a few points there, but I was having a smoke. Ha, John. But yes, no. How would personally? I'm not sure if you have any ideas for this. This is quite a big question to be dropping on someone, but. For you, what would be a really good representation in a video game or maybe a movie or anything, any writing format? What would be a good way to kind of construct an asexual character without just simply leaving, the fact that they're not sexually interested in other people?
Well, there's always been a scenario that I've been playing with in my head, and that's been a basic succubus scenario in which there are female-appearing demons seducing let's say the male warriors or such, and there will be a characters that will, let's just say the succubus would say that my charm affects all men, and there will be a character saying simply, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't need to be anything grand, but just a subtle thing like that would be enough. Basically, a man ignoring seduction. It doesn't need to be any grand feast, but it's a little things like that, because we can mimic the behavior of let's say normal people with sex drives, but when it comes to the situation, we can use it like as a draw benefit in a way. And I'd like to see a small thing. It just needs to be a few words, and that would, in my opinion, give the essence of an ace character out really well.
I think that would be a very good possibility. I don't know why, but I have quite a silly, funny, like kind of comedy example in my head of you're aware of like all the mythology behind sirens of that at sea, seducing sailors and then killing them. I don't know why. I just kind of had the idea of the captain of a ship being asexual, and he stumbles across a group of sirens, and the other sailors are like, "Let's go stop by there, guys," and he's like, I don't know, that seems pretty fucked up, guys. Let's not.
This sounds like a really shitty Monkey Island parody.
Yeah.
It does.
Thank you for thank you for giving my concepts great merit. So
it's okay. I mean, just don't quit your day job. Oh wait. You're poor.
What's a burn coming from Sargonstorm, man?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna start calling you Robin's fluffer.
Our next guest actually has a question for the current guest and has requested to come on stream. Do you mind answering some questions from him, Henry?
Yeah, sure. No problem.
All right. Let me send him the contact information.
I was expecting to get questions a lot from people because I'm kind of a rare thing to see.
You're kind of a big deal.
You're a unicorn.
Well, I don't think I'm a big deal, but I'm a unicorn, like you said it.
You're a eunuch. What?
A unicorn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and beyond that, I've had a lot of conversations with you. Even if you weren't asexual, you'd still be a great guy to talk to.
Ah, thank you.
And also, yeah, you are. Don't beat yourself up. There's plenty of people in England that speak English far less fluently than you do.
You what, mate?
Yeah, like Cerberus, for example. I don't know. It shows you that they basically hand out master degrees in history at this point.
Yeah.
Well,
I learned history. What?
the
Sorry.
thing is that I start speaking much more fluently when I get like just jumping into like this is quite stressful because I have only done like 2 public appearances talking about this stuff, so I'm still getting used to it. Like the last stream I was on, I was freaking the fuck out until the very end.
It's okay. Don't worry. You'll get used to it quite quickly.
You did earn your points when you told Shrek to shut up, though.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good.
Well, let's just say I'm a person who got very little patience for bullshit.
Ooh.
Once
Shots fired.
basically, once you go, like, you can make your point, but once you have made your point, move on to the next thing. You don't need to repeat it, and once you start repeating, it starts to become bullshit. And it hinders the conversation.
No, I agree. I tend to agree.
And Shrek kind of was repeating the same thing later on, and I just got sick of it.
I can't actually remember that. Like, what? Sir, can you?
It was a big discussion about bullshit, like we have most times. It was to do with the piracy. That was it. It was to do with piracy.
Yeah, it was about the the customer right return policies, and I just tell them that you need to exercise this right, or that's the way you vote. That was
Shrek didn't realise that the TF2 that he bought was the legitimate censored version by his own government.
Oh yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I know plenty of German people that bought Left 4 Dead 2, and they just specifically asked one of their English friends or any other fucking country that wasn't Australia, and because they're just as fucked up as you lot, Germany. What happened? You didn't even lose the war. You don't have an excuse. But yeah, a lot of German people, they just go to their friends and it's like, all right, do I get the really cool version which has all the blood and the locational damage on the zombies in it, or do I have the version where they just swap out fucking all the locational damage for squirt guns, and when you shoot the zombies, they spurt out rainbows instead? I don't know.
Well, what I have heard, the censored version is much easier on your computer.
Yeah, because there's a lot less rendering. There's a lot less to render. Yeah,
there's really no decal rendering at all.
Yeah.
Our next guest came in a little bit early because he has on his request he wanted to ask Henry a couple questions, so I thought I'd let him on. Matthew, why don't you introduce yourself and then you can ask Henry something.
All right. Hello, my name's Matthew. I'm more
of
anti-Gamergate.
Da da da.
That's okay.
Is my mic working?
Yeah, it is.
Alright. So, hello.
Alright, we will be going to like some differences of opinion soon, but you did say you had a question for Henry, so. Yeah,
so Henry, I really have liked your segment so far. Just curious if is a well-made asexual character in a game, is that something you would like to see happen, or are you kind of indifferent to that?
Well, let's just
happy with what's happening now, or would you like to see kind of something that represents where you're coming from, or as a character in a game?
Well, I'd love to see it, but I don't want, like, I don't demand one. I'd love to see one, but I don't demand one. Like, the honesty, at the end of the day, me being asexual is the least interesting thing about me. And I'd love to see a character like this, but I'm not going to go around demanding it, because writing such a character and doing such a character will be quite a complicated matter, and I really don't see that there is need for such thing. I'd love to see it, but I don't think there is a need for it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're kind of indifferent a little bit. You wouldn't
Well,
you wouldn't be upset. Like obviously, you'd actually like it if something happened, but you're not.
let's just say it will feel like a pleasant surprise, but at the end of the day, because in my opinion, sexuality of a character in a video game doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't break a deal for me. It's such things like your race, color, your age, gender. I see bastards. I look for the idea of the character, what the writers were trying to create. I'm looking for that, what the character represents, what is his meta, what he or it, well, basically what he is. I'm going to use he as a neutral because I know in English masculine is also the neutral. This is what I've been taught, but it doesn't matter what. Basically, I look if you are a character that is out to take down the evil king. I want to see the idea why you are out to take that evil king. I'm out to see your motivation. I want to know why you are doing it, and the everything around that is just to make adding colors to the painting, but a painting can be beautiful as a black and white.
That's really interesting. So like, there's something you were talking about earlier, where if a character was able to just flat out ignore like a sexual advance because they were asexual, it just had no factor with them. I think that would be super interesting to see play out in a game.
I know, right? It would be like it's just like that's why I'm using this scenario in my head because it will throw a huge wrench into the like what the player was expecting to happen.
Yeah, and it can actually there's tropes that Anita hasn't gotten to yet in her video series, and one of them I think will eventually be kind of the succubus type female character.
Well, I used succubus as an example because succubus, there are different lore versions of it, but succubus is one that I know to exist in English. But as far as I know, the seducing demon it exists on both genders and in all cultures, but I only know in English the word succubus.
Actually, I can fill you in on that. The incubus would be the male counterpart to the succubus.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
In English speaking. But I think it would be really interesting to see kind of that trope turned on its head, where you've got. It doesn't have to be a demon. The succubus trope kind of applies in general of a female using sexuality to kind of drive a male character. And being able to see that just turned on its head by an asexual character would be a really super interesting kind of story beat, I think.
Or from a female to male, or the other way around, the vice versa. It will be interesting to see to play out as a scenario, regardless of the genders or sexualities in the equation. It will be interesting to see as a concept to use it.
Right. I do have a couple other questions. I wanted to kind of specify the one you already sort of answered. I'm just curious if like over-sexualization triggers anything in you. Like if you see something that's just over-sexualized, are you like being asexual? Kind of what is your reaction to that? Is it just you just ignore it, or is it like oh not this again, or
well, I see it in two ways. Over-sexualization it's kind of, to me, it's like let's just say a character I'm playing is an over-sexualized. It's a turn-off to me. It just starts to annoy in media, especially like I can't watch anime because I get annoyed about the, let's just say, the fan service that is really.
I am in the exact same way.
Yeah, it just annoys me and it just takes the focus away from me, and it's just like I don't care about it. Like it doesn't. It's not something that will be like a violence is a bigger issue to me due to my history. But it's just like unless you can redeem the fact that it's sexualized in some other manner, I'm just gonna lose interest quite quickly. Example, was it Dragon's Crown or something like this? where the designs were for the both male and female were extremely overdone. I appreciated the artistic merit of it, but I just couldn't take it seriously. It just annoyed me so much.
I don't think the anime thing is I don't think you have to be asexual to get that trigger.
I just use it as an example because there it's really prevalent, because I see things like just billboards and basic movies, they get annoyed me because all you see is beautiful men and beautiful women. There is no middle ground, and I think it would add a lot to the character if he would be able to do things from the middle ground. But sadly, I understand, because I understand why these exist. We appreciate the shade, let's say, masculine physique. We appreciate it. We appreciate the curves and the shape of a woman's body from a biological standard. We just look at old Greek art, how all the men were super muscular Herculean archetypes. I understand why it is, but it doesn't mean I let it be. I can see past it, but it doesn't mean it annoys me any later. It's like a little itch. Just when it gets too bad, it's just I need to stop. I understand why it is, but I would like to see somebody break the mold. I understand why the mold is there, but yeah.
No, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I've come to the point where I kind of think the mold is lazy. And I'm.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it is. It's an easy way to get attention. Like I said, I go around in the art circles a lot, and I said, if you want to get attention as an artist, draw porn. It's an easy way to get clicks. Seriously.
But obviously, I mean, just going back to you're saying it's tired. Do you feel that it shouldn't exist anymore? I'm just trying to get a feel of how anti-GG or how anti whatever it is you are. Do you feel that there's no place for it anymore in society?
To me, no. I don't think that at all.
Okay.
That I don't want to. Are we ready to switch over to me? Because it's a little early.
We'll get into that in a minute. Do we have unless sorry.
We could ask Henry about specific character. Because Bayonetta is a pretty polarizing character, even amongst like third wave feminists, because there's a portion that it's a power fantasy and it's owning this kind of stereotypical sexiness, and that is empowering for females. And then there's the yuck that she's too sexualized, and I'm curious.
What you're essentially describing isn't so much third wave feminists, it's just the difference between sex negative and sex positive feminists.
Okay.
No, sorry, I was just pointing out.
Yeah, that's what you're describing, and just go ahead, just form your question to me.
I'm curious from an asexual perspective how you picture Bayonetta, if that's a game you've played, Bayonetta 2 specifically, but Bayonetta 1, of course. What your takeaway was from Bayonetta the character?
Well, I have seen streams and let's plays of it. I don't own I don't own a single console, so I haven't played that in that sense. But I have seen the full let's plays, and I'll break it down to 3 parts. I love the idea of what Bayonetta represents as a character. I enjoy the artistic quality of it, but in a way, to me, to play the game, the cutscenes, how it's done, it just annoys to me because I understand why they did to me, but it's not appealing to me in an animation sense. Like, I understand her as a character. I find her character too beautiful, well crafted, although I don't like classes, but that's a little thing I have against that. But otherwise, I appreciate the character's beauty, both as an idea and physically, but it's just after a certain point it starts to annoy me. But I understand, the use as a tool, and I love the way they are using it. But it's just, I'd rather see more calm. Like, example, as an artist, I do not appreciate overdone, stylized. I appreciate calm, measured, simplified characters.
So more minimalist.
Yeah, well, basically, when I did my art diplomas, I focused on minimalism and aesthetics. Those were the two philosophies I followed, and as an artist, I fully recognize myself in those fields, aesthetics and minimalism.
That's super interesting. So it's kind of your problems with Bayonetta have nothing to do with the character so much as the aesthetic.
Yeah, I put like the example. Another character that pisses me the right off is what was the guy's name in the God of War?
What, the main character?
Yeah,
Kratos.
Kratos pisses me the right off because he's overdone masculine, he's super muscular, and many, let's just say, in Western comics, the male characters kind of annoy me because they are all super pumped, muscular beasts, and it's just like it's too overdone to me. Let's just say my probably favorite comic characters. I don't read much comics, but they are the Teen Robin and Kid Flash, because they are not as a bodybuild overdone. They are really human looking, and that appeals to me.
That's awesome. I've played the 3 kind of core God of War games, and by the end of it, I'm always like, this. I don't get driven off as much by the visual of the masculinity so much as I just don't feel like I can relate at all to Kratos by the end of it. There's a point where there's just a couple points where you can do something that's good for you, but kind of terrible for the women involved. And Kratos as a character is just driven by rage in a way. I think it goes beyond just a masculine portrayal and becomes kind of.
Well, he's a god of war.
Yeah, he's a Greek serial killer at some point.
Yeah, but I can explain a bigger issue that I have with characters like that, and it goes back a few years to the 8th grade. I was beaten up by 3 other kids extremely severely, and since that I had this disgust towards violence, this extreme disgust. I went to shrink. Basically, I had a trigger in violence. I went to shrink. I got treated. I got medications. I spent years working through it, but still I have this distaste towards violence as a tool in games. I'd rather see an alternative solution, but I understand when it comes to necessity that there is no other way to solve the situation but violence. I understand it and I'm willing to use it, but I still cannot but help that the grunt number 4692 that I just killed, he had a life, he was a human being, and the more human the character looks to me, more distasteful I find it. But that's my own issue, that is based on my history, and that's because I've been a target of extreme violence. My skull got cracked, I was bleeding from my head, I almost died on that gravel ground. And that's another issue, but that's why my disgust towards violence, and it has nothing to do that it's overused. It's just that I had to go through it. I understand what it is to be a target. I understand what it is to be fucking afraid lying on the gravel ground and watching as everything goes black, as your friend stands in front of you calling for help. But I worked through that, and I'm proud of it. I'm extremely fucking proud of it.
Most definitely. What kind of video games do you usually play, Henry?
I play Crusader Kings 2, Europa Universalis, simulation, financial simulators are a lot of my thing, and then just basic dungeon crawler. I've been sinking a lot of time to Path of Exile, and then I play some Dota, but I just haven't found another type of games lately that will be into my fancy. But I'm a lot of in the simulation, and the reason I love Dungeon Crawler is because in there you can use the math of this is going to do 1% more damage, and that appeals to me because it's playing with the stats. I find that more fun than the grinding itself. So basically I steer away from those things because they don't appeal to me, and I focus on the ground. Like in Europa Universalis, I always try to do diplomatical annexation of vassals and other countries if I possibly can.
That's cool. No, it's very interesting. I also love Path of Exile. Fuck yeah. Definitely one of the best Diablo-esque games that came out in recent years. Also with one of the best free-to-play mods.
Yeah, it's extremely good. I love it.
Henry, it was good having you on. I would love to have you as a guest again.
Sure.
You're always an interesting guy to talk to, and I hope to speak to you more on Skype.
Sure, yeah. I can be found on Skype, on Twitter, and I probably will be showing up on Robin streams since I get along there. So I'm sure
You're going to be a regular.
Hopefully.
Yes,
I'm not always available because it starts around 4 p.m. of my time. I'm not always available, so.
Yeah, no, Robin. He's had to restructure the timing of his stream now. He needs to kind of have a life. Whilst it was fun for him for about how long was he doing it? Like a month straight, of doing 12 hours every weekday.
Yeah, sometimes more.
Yeah, I get why. Don't blame him for it.
Yeah,
and if you want to follow Henry, his Twitter handle is in the description below. And also, Cerebus, I fixed your Twitter handle. So if you're looking, you're welcome.
But I gotta say, thanks for inviting me, and Matthew, getting questions from you, it was really nice, and I appreciated that. I haven't had a chance to really talk to who recognizes as aunties, so thank you.
No, thank you. That was, I think, my favorite segment since I started kind of following this group of Gamergaters. That was really good.
Can you two just kiss already?
What?
Can you two just kiss already? No, I'm joking.
Yeah, let's end this circle jerk and carry on.
Have a good night, Henry.
Yeah.
Have a lovely night, Henry. It was wonderful to have you on.
All right. Now, Matthew, I'd like to start by asking you how you first heard of Gamergate and what was your initial reaction?
So I've actually been asked this before, and like I said before, I don't really remember when exactly I was exposed to Gamergate as a thing, kind of post the Gamers Are Dead articles, but I have been involved with gaming for a long time, and I've been seeing the kind of brewing sentiment grow for a while before that. As far back as I felt like this has always been going on, just not formalized.
What do you mean? Sorry.
So like the community fallout from like Jeff Gerstmann getting fired over the Kane and Lynch review. I mean, that's years ago now.
From what, sorry?
Jeff Gerstmann being fired over the Kane and Lynch review.
Oh yes, from GameSpot, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh no, that was I feel that the Gamergate in general has been something that's been brewing for a very long time.
Yes, that's
even before that. I'd say even before that, long before.
Well, yeah, but that was just a good example of one of the grievances that the gamers have had.
I would say it goes back to my childhood when people started realizing that Nintendo Power was kind of a weird magazine, if you really think about it. Like, I mean, this has been some of the core.
It's not very objective.
The core ideas have been around for a long time. But my first exposure to the word #Gamergate was probably through Polygon on one of their articles around that time. And then I've been kind of following it off and on since.
When you first heard of it, were you did you have a gut reaction that this was this Gamergate movement was a bad thing, or were you like neutral about it, or what were your feelings on it? Like, how did you react?
I would probably say negative. although I understand some of the ideas,
You understand the grievances and the points that it's trying to address, but do you just not necessarily agree in the way that it's being dealt with?
that, and I've gotten to know some of you online, and I know that maybe you're not involved in harassment stuff, but I also don't think anyone can own a hashtag, and anyone operating through that can say whatever they want, and that there has been a lot of harassment and violence and stuff that has stemmed from people that consider themselves Gamergate.
Sure, but do you...
will you acknowledge that some of the worst harassment doesn't seem to be coming, though, from the Gamergate community as a whole? It seems to be coming from a third party. Will you acknowledge the existence of the third party?
Is this third party saying they're not Gamergate?
They have no interest whatsoever in the core ideals of Gamergate.
I would
basically,
say,
to clarify, to expand.
If that's what you're stating, then I mean, Gamergate, the hashtag was kind of christened by Adam Baldwin, who has no core problems with gaming press. He doesn't care. Some of the biggest names in Gamergate don't really have any ties to gaming or being a gamer.
Examples?
Adam Baldwin.
Well, do you know that for sure?
What?
Do you know that for sure?
Do you?
Well, do you?
Actually, exactly. That's the point.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that Baldwin has said that. I remember him a while ago on the Ed Morrison show when Inter Aristocrat was on there. I think he did mention that he does actually play games. So I'm not sure if he's like a hardcore gamer, but he's at least played some video.
In his Twitter stream, he has seen. I don't have a screenshot. I'm sorry, but he has said that he doesn't really care. He's just spreading the word.
And you're talking about Inter Aristocrat?
No, I'm talking about Adam Baldwin.
Okay, that's fair then.
He doesn't have horse in the race or something like that. Anyways, I think that the possibility that someone's just stirring shit is possible.
Okay. Well, to expand on like Cerebus's earlier question, like. I think what he means is basically people who exploit the hashtag for the purpose of trolling. Like if there was a hashtag that you support and like some troll decided to use that to harass people, you wouldn't really consider that person part of that movement. Or would you?
Maybe not, but I'm not a hashtag activist, so I don't know. I think that you guys have championed the decentralized nature of Gamergate, and when there is no centralized, like, this is good, this is bad, then you end up with having to accept everything that's done under your name, kind of. I mean, that's just how it goes. As far as, that doesn't have to change your core beliefs, but it does, you do have to acknowledge that that reflects upon things happening under the same sort of hashtag movement, is people doing whatever they want under it, especially when those things are like attacking people that your movement doesn't really like anyways.
Okay, for example, which ones, which attacks in particular?
Okay, so attacks on Anita Sarkeesian. You guys are not a fan of Anita Sarkeesian.
Okay.
Whether you attacked her or not is irrelevant if someone attacked her under the guise of your movement.
Is there okay? Well, there's a number of reasons why I take issue with that, like that accusation. There's two things. One, is there any hard evidence that links someone in Gamergate, even harassing Anita Sarkeesian, or the harassment she received, like the bomb threats and the death threats? Is there like hard evidence that suggests that it was from Gamergate?
I don't have any hard evidence.
Well, that's my problem. Like, if there was like a written letter to Anita Sarkeesian saying that I'm going to kill you at this speech, signed Gamergate, you could say there's a link there. But so far, outside of Anita's word, there has been no evidence shown that this is actually coming from Gamergate.
A good example, I think.
Is your argument that no one from Gamergate or claiming to be...
No. Here's the thing, right? Are you aware of a lot of the recent threats made against Anita that she spoke out about? Are you aware that it was from a Brazilian not even a reporter, but essentially a Brazilian shitposter, essentially trying to advertise his website?
He was answering my question I had. Let you speak. I just want his turn to talk. Go ahead, Matthew.
Are you saying that no threats, violence, anything has come from someone claiming to be Gamergate?
I would not claim that because I don't know everyone involved with Gamergate. I have not looked at every tweet. My personal experience of seeing the hashtag used, I haven't seen harassment from my end, but I'm not going to say there has been no harassment from Gamergate. I can't.
And there's tiers of harassment too. There is. I see to this day there's a lot of dogpiling, which there might not necessarily be anything violent directly, but there's still a lot of just very kind of a pestering type mentality amongst the hashtag that you can.
Well, do you feel that if you put something out controversial in 140 characters, that it's bound to, and then not often respond or back up your claim, that it will lead to stirring the pot, basically, to negative emotions? I mean, this is if we're trying to have a dialogue with these people and they flat out, do not respond to any criticisms. I mean, Twitter is the worst place to have a conversation, but unfortunately it's the battleground that was chosen not by us at all. But the hashtag activism had to spring from somewhere, and unfortunately it was Twitter.
But do you think that people like Zoe Quinn owe a response to anybody? I mean, they're not games journalists.
Okay, Zoe Quinn is a unique individual in all this, in the fact that she is definitely stirring the pot, and has done consecutively, and every single one of her interviews since has tried to make her the central case for Gamergate, whereas Gamergate transcended that long ago, even in its inception, basically, as it moved on to the journalists.
But it did start there. Well,
it started. It's a very subtle. It's a very subtle change. Yes, the burger and fries incident, which was the precursor to Gamergate, was Zoe Quinn. Zoe Quinn has continued to make herself a part of the Gamergate story herself, and has not been responsible for her tweets, the way that she has conducted herself through this has been quite abhorrent, basically. So.
But I mean, her life was dug into by hundreds of people. Someone her ex-boyfriend posted a very public blog post about very private matters.
But that's not Gamergate. That's not Gamergate, though. You have the burger and fries incident, and then you have
burger and fries kicked off Gamergate. I mean, the hashtag that was Gamergate was specifically.
But nobody talks about the Zoe post anymore. Nobody brings this up.
That's not true, because I've been joining these chats and listening to these chats for the last week or two.
That's chats. Which chats? Sorry.
These open houses.
Yeah, most of the responses to Zoe Quinn on those have been, why is she getting involved again in the story? Have you questioned why she's on the run? And when you say on the run, visiting Nottingham's Games Festival, basically, and on a trip around Europe, and broadcasting her locations, they don't seem to be the actions of somebody that's taken advice of the FBI, which was originally, not to publicise death threats or locations. You think?
All right, let's move on.
Well,
Okay.
like,
I don't know what her personal state of mind is or why she chooses to.
Okay, that's fine. If you want to move on, fine.
Well, can I just want to say one last thing before we do move on.
Okay.
The thing when it comes to death threats, right, is that it's incredibly hard to tell who sent them, firstly. Secondly, we've already kind of debunked a lot of, oh, well, it was definitely Gamergaters sending Anita death threats. A good example being a Brazilian shitposter that was essentially trying to advertise his site. He was the one who made up accounts that... I'm pretty sure had pictures of, photoshopped pictures of Anita being beaten up and really disgusting shit like that, all under the guise of trying to get people to his website on the profile. I believe it was in Rio, was it? Fuck, I don't even know how to put it. Somewhere in Brazil. There you go. And the other thing is that it doesn't really, I don't think it particularly matters. Within any given movement, there's always going to be some kind of friction. There's always going to be some kind of violence. If you're to discredit a movement by saying, well, there's death threats and those are bad, ergo the entire movement doesn't have a point, you might as well say, well, civil rights are bad because there was race riots. Do you see what I mean? It's a very easy way to discredit any kind of large movement with lots of people in it. Of course people are going to be dicks. The most you can do is not publicize them and ignore them and shun them. There's not much else we could do. I can't go to someone's house and tell them to shut the fuck up and stop posting about how, I don't know, anything inflammatory towards any of the literary who's or anything like that. We can't police that. The most that we can do is report the people that are genuinely harassing and threatening these people and move on. If you give them credence, all you do is give them reason to keep going. We're giving them attention.
I mean, can I just say, the first and last time I've ever tweeted Zoe Quinn was to thank her for thanking the Gamergate harassment patrol for reporting what appeared to be third-party, non-related Gamergate threats, basically, to her. And she thanked them publicly, and that's about the only good deed that she's, ever...
She's done the so as well, hasn't she? Leigh Alexander.
Leigh Alexander, has. There was a brief unification in the fact that we all hated that Brazilian guy that was making the situation 10 times worse.
But then when you say that, you make sure to include even though that's the only good thing she's done. Comment.
Oh yeah,
From our perspective,
you can't really successfully separate yourselves from people who do openly treat her like shit. You kind of side treat her.
No, that's not true.
No,
just because I dislike someone doesn't mean I want to see someone get beaten up.
Yeah.
You can't polarize someone's position like that. I dislike Anita Sarkeesian. It doesn't mean I want to see harm come to her. When
both elements come from this hashtag, it kind of presents a conundrum. I mean, I'm here talking to you guys. If I thought all of you were like that potentially small group, then I wouldn't be in this conversation. I just think you guys were crazy people, and I wouldn't talk to you. But you can't. It's hard to move past that, especially when that's kind of.
Why not when? Why is it so hard for you to distance yourself? Because you have no input on the attacks. You haven't attacked anybody. Hopefully on the Gamergate side. Why can't you distance yourself why can't we distance ourselves like you have, from your side? If you want this open conversation, we're here. We're having it. We all have our opinions about other things, but our main focus is hopefully the integrity in journalism, games journalism, and where we want it to sort of progress, and maybe reach some kind of some olive branch situation.
All right, so let's go to that topic then.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. The topic of resolving Gamergate?
Yeah, so what is Gamergate all about?
I can answer that simply. It's about it's a consumer revolt against the bias and corruption in gaming press that has led to an anti-consumer mentality
Okay, so
on the part of the journalists.
all right. So you don't speak for all or all consumers of games, right? You know, you do understand that, or don't?
I do understand that, yes.
Okay. All right. So what is being done about that?
About
What
what?
is Gamergate doing, and with that as a stated goal, or that as kind of a trigger? What is the mission? What are you guys doing?
All right. I think that if we're going, if I can use military terms for a sec, metaphorically, there's two fronts essentially. One is to spread the truth by dispelling myths and reporting what's actually going on with the corruption in games journalism, and the other is Operation Disrespectful Nod, which is essentially emailing the advertisers of these websites and asking them to pull out.
All right. So disrespectful nod would to accomplish that goal would kind of use the things about games journalism that they've found to email advertisers.
The biggest benefit boon we have, honestly, is the slanderous articles against gamers. These articles have basically said that gaming as a gamer as an identity is dead, and that's essentially attacking the audience who are gamers. So that is why Intel pulled out, because they saw our point and they decided that they're going to remove their ads, and that's why other companies have done the same.
Right. So Intel was a big win for Gamergate, and it's because of the nature of Leigh Alexander's article. I have no argument really that to defend that article. I took it a slightly different way than I think Gamergate does, but I also see what is written there. So the Gama Sutra's audience is actually developers, so it's kind of a weird like secondary burn on gamers. It's not really their core consumer. But Intel's consumers are obviously heavily overlapped. And I think that them pulling out based off that article, I think that's totally just. Things I don't really understand are the disrespectful nod is why that sort of work doesn't continue versus finding tangential stuff in order to take down games journalism, like Sam Biddle's tweets to get after Gawker, which would then take down Kotaku.
We have been trying those avenues. Gawker has flat out reinstigated the war, basically, against, had stoked the fires. They've written articles. We decried, basically, the bullying language of Sam Biddle's tweets, and then he got promoted by Gawker. Gawker, we have been targeting their advertisers, and we've been fighting against the narrative that they continued to put forward. Not so much, more recently, Stephen Totilo has flat out said that he will not have, Stephen Totilo of Kotaku, which is linked into the Gawker Media Network, won't have an ethics policy, basically, as he finds it's too constrictive, and that is a huge issue, and it's still one I don't think that Gamergate will settle on. Is why we continue to mail advertisers, sponsors, like Mercedes-Benz that pulled out. Adobe pulled out for completely different reasons, although and then was forced to make their position clear that they didn't side with Gamergate, but it didn't matter whether they sided with us. The message was still anti-bullying, basically. So it is continuing.
All right, so Steven Totillo says he doesn't need an ethics policy, partially because he doesn't think gaming sites about gaming enthusiast sites really need that sort of thing. It's not.
He's a journalist, and the problem with Kotaku is that they keep on turning their actual authors of these articles from bloggers to journalists when it suits them, when they want professional appraisal.
When they want professional access and appraisal, they're journalists. When they're getting heat, they're bloggers.
Yeah. And I'm just responding to Old School Video. I mean, here in the chat, are you guys really feeding this troll again? He just no, he hasn't shilled. I think he's.
I'll address that.
Yeah.
Sometimes people in Gamergate spaz out and like assume people are shills for no reason. Matthew did get into a heated conversation with a lot of people, but he just has his own opinion. It's not a case of him being a shill.
I wouldn't say he's shilling here. I'd say there are a few facts that he might be lacking in understanding Gamergate, but I haven't seen anything of shilling.
I get shit on a lot when I come join these things, and I don't think that I'm being particularly crazy about anything. I'm definitely not one of the people on Twitter right now responding to every tweet with "you all hate women."
I think what maybe is the. It's very difficult, obviously. The two sides are quite heavily polarized, and some of the things that you're saying are very. They lack the kind of understanding that we'd hoped maybe people had been able to access over the 2 months to see other sides to the arguments that have been put forward by the mainstream media. We hoped. And I could sense that from a couple of just the words and phrases that you use, but I don't think it's shilling. I just think it's. I mean, I'm not trying to convert you at all. You can have your opinions; they're perfectly fine. But I think you have to understand that we have opinions as well, basically.
I do.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Matt. It is not fair that other people think that people kind of shitpost on you, borderline at least, and I don't stand with them when they do that. So anyway, I'd like to go back on topic.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that, John. Sorry if I had a few points, and I thought this was going to be a different conversation than it was, and I do apologise if I've come across it all a bit heated.
It's okay.
I'm actually going to just pause myself and go have a cigarette. I'll be back.
All right, go for it. Okay, Matt, you have the floor. You want to say something in response to Cerebus statements?
Well, when I was asked to come here, I was asked to just kind of bring my perspective on Gamergate, and I've talked the past couple nights on a few different specific things, but I did want to kind of just introduce, as an outsider looking in, I haven't really done anything specific on the other side that's very public, other than come and talk to you guys a couple times. But this is kind of my perspective on the whole thing about GG in general. So I think that there's this sort of general frustration about things that are happening in games, and I don't think, even though you guys claimed it's all about ethics and journalism, I think that's something you've been able to find the most on. Game Journal Pros list and some relationships that weren't disclosed and stuff like that, but I don't really think that's the core of the problem that Gamergaters are feeling. I think there's this kind of general frustration in the perceived attacks on something they identify with. Whether that attack is something that I see as fairly benign, like Anita Sarkeesian and her tropes videos, or something that's more aggressive, like Leigh Alexander's teardown of the gamer identity.
Okay, that's a fair point.
I think that is actually the core problem, and the ethics in journalism is a way that you're able to phrase it. Because it's more tangible than this, I am pissed because people are shitting on me in general. Nothing's wrong with our games. Everything's fine. We don't hate women. Why are you saying that? What is with all this very progressive leftist politics that are entering reviews? All these things that are happening that you're frustrated about. And the ethics one is kind of this more tangible rather than this general, like, shit is coming down on us.
I don't believe. I personally don't believe so. I believe ethics in gaming journalism is a start. The thing is that it's the most obvious example that we have at the moment. Once we deal with that, we can move on to bigger things, like the fact that publishers and studios and everything, with publishers, we've all known for years that most reviews from most big sites are essentially bought off. We know this is true. We know the fact that when you get an NDA with a game, with a pre-release game that you're like a review copy, we know that you get a 30-page fucking Bible telling you how to review the game, how to talk about the game, what to talk about, what not to talk about, if you want to work with that company again in the future. We know all this exists, but the thing is that the reason that we're going after ethics in gaming journalism is because it's far more tangible, because we have evidence to the contrary of that everything's okay, everything's hunky-dory, no, we're not doing anything shady. And the gaming industry has got to this point now where you can do nothing surprises people anymore. Once you've been inside the gaming journalism scene for a while, you're essentially desensitized to all of this shit. You're desensitized to the entire fact that you can go to VIP trips to 5-star hotels with a free bar, and you can play a pre-release of a game, so you have to report on it, all paid from a PR company that's part of a producer, from a producer's behalf. The thing is that ethics and gaming journalism is a starting point. Gamers have been pissed, and we've been pissed for a long time. Like with GameSpot and their firing of one of the creators of Giant Bomb, if I'm not mistaken. The thing is that this is the final explosion, the explosion fan. This is the kind of everyone kind of going, okay, stop with this shit. We've had enough. That's what my personal opinion is. It's a starting point. The entire fact that you can have people like Patricia Hernandez write reviews about her roommates. Seriously?
She did not write a review. That's...
Oh, sorry, positive coverage. It wasn't a review. It was something to do with her game, and it was in a positive light, and it was not disclosed. Something that's very anti everything within their own ethics policy. It's just silly. Like the entire fact that nobody's surprised by it anymore is exactly why we're angry.
No, I agree that that is the most tangible thing right now. I actually use that word.
No, I know.
I am on board with some aspects of the ethics in journalism problem. I think more disclosure needs to happen. I have a serious problem with the way PR companies and AAA publishers operate their reviews, and that is something that I would be on board for solutions for. I think it's gross. But I think that isn't as important right now. I think the ethics stuff, you're able to find some relationship stuff that is useful, but I think you're ignoring that you're actually frustrated about so much more. And it's not to do with these very tangible review parties or relationships only. It's also that Polygon interjects their politics into reviews, and that has been mentioned by the same crew in discussions that I've had. It's earlier in this very stream. There's the Bay Area culturalization of video games journalism. That is not an ethical concern.
I would argue it is.
Can I
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Matt. Continue, and then I just want to respond to you afterwards.
Introducing your beliefs into a review that you are making on your site, that's called freedom of speech. I don't know, like, they don't owe you reviews tailored to pure subjectivity, which I believe impossible, and they don't owe you to ignore their own personal opinions. I mean, that's actually what they owe you, and that's why I go to a lot of these sites. I want those opinions. didn't stop me from enjoying the first Bayonetta that it was overly sexualized or that people talked about that. It does. Anita Sarkeesian's comments on tropes versus women doesn't stop me from enjoying. Like, I still think The Legend of Zelda is one of my favorite kind of series of all time. I think it's kind of gone downhill since around Ocarina of Time, but a couple good ones since. And knowing that there's kind of a trope involved with damseling in that series has not affected my ability to enjoy it. And Anita mentioned several times in her videos that it should.
Matt, if I might cut you off because you are bringing up a lot of points at once.
Can I just respond to your early point?
Okay, but the general point is that the introduction of these progressive politics is a frustrating thing for a lot of people. And I think that's part of the Gamergate movement, whether you directly acknowledge it or not.
Yes, no, it is, and I can tell you exactly why. The entire fact, like, I personally love sociology. I enjoy cultural commentary on everything. I do. The thing is that it does start really bothering me when it starts directly influencing people who make these games careers. A good example, Metacritic has been used as an industry standard for a long time now in order to essentially ascertain bonuses. A good example of this is Fallout New Vegas, a game that got 89 on Metacritic, and if they got 1 point more, 1 point, they would have got a bonus, and they probably would have got keep the go-ahead to continue on making another Fallout game. They were 1 point short. And the reason I don't want cultural commentary in reviews, and that's my only point, is I don't want them in reviews, is because you are directly influencing someone's career, and it's not on the merits of the mechanics or the story of their game. If your problem is with the story of the game and that the characters are two-dimensional and that you can't relate to anything, fine. If your problem is that you don't like the way your characters are dressed because it offends you, then you can write any kind of piece on that, and you can examine all of the history behind this and why you think this is, but keep it out of game reviews. You have to try and keep them as objective as possible, as possible, and your subjective beliefs to yourself. I'm fine with you having an opinion on everything. I encourage you to talk about them in opinion pieces, but when you are reviewing a game and scoring one, I don't want your political beliefs coming into it.
Okay, well, first off, that is a problem with the industry that should be tackled, that there even ties to review scores for compensation. Second off, changing your review to improve, changing your review knowingly based off the fact that someone's compensated for it would be the opposite of games ethics. Third off, Fallout New Vegas, I don't know that any of the major sites that are problems for you contributed their reviews to that game. Polygon definitely did not. Kotaku definitely did not. They aren't rolled up in the Metacritic score. You can go check that right now. So, Giant Bomb, I think, gave it an 80, which is 4 out of 5 stars for them. Which you can't really get a 90 out of Giant Bomb. And Fallout New Vegas was not a 5-star game. It was buggy as shit when it launched. I was right there trying to get it to run and stay running, and it wasn't as good as Fallout 3. It was good, but it wasn't as good as Fallout 3 for me.
But here's the difference. Like, it's not. I'm not implying that the cultural commentary was anything to do with Fallout's release. I was simply giving you an example where people suffer and a studio suffers at the hands of their publishers because gaming journalists act in a certain way. The problem is that you just don't keep your cultural commentary out of it. If your problem is bugs, that is completely acceptable. That is fine. I'm not saying that Fallout should have got a 90. I'm not saying that it should have got an 80. I'm saying that it's a big problem and that we can't exacerbate this problem by everyone injecting their personal opinions on politics into video games.
Okay, yeah, I go to Polygon for those reviews.
Can I?
Cerebus have his say first, and then you can go.
Can I just add a sort of caveat to that as well? I mean, for instance, Battlefield 4's release has, I mean, nowhere in the reviews, which obviously focused on, the problems that were inherent upon release due to the sort of rushed nature of the program. Nowhere in that game was it affected by maybe rampant military aggression by the US, and or that sort of commentary. A lot of the reviews were, purely based on sort of the mechanics, the improvements over 3, So there's kind of like a double kind of standard there in the fact that when it comes to if it affects females, and Polygon did have a direct impact on Bayonetta 2's review score and potential bonuses there. That didn't impact for instance, a sort of Battlefield in the way that it operated and the way that basically it scored on Metacritic. If there wasn't anything, it's. You see what I'm getting at there? There's kind of like it surely should have been the same.
I do see what you're getting at. You're saying that there's specific politics that are entering game reviews, and that's a problem for you, which is what I'm saying. I agree that is one of your guys' problems.
But
that's not an ethical concern. And Bayonetta is sitting at a 91 on Metacritic right now. Polygon obviously didn't hurt it too bad. That's probably the best reviewed Wii game ever. I don't know.
It is. No, you give a very good point. Yes, it didn't directly review.
And again, Fallout New Vegas, one of your examples, has
guys.
commentary situation. I go to Polygon. So this is from my consumer angle. I want that interjection of personal opinion and politics. I go to Polygon, and if your guys' stated goal is to get rid of that, like, what are reviews going to be if they don't have people's personal opinions in them? They're just going to be boring.
No, they're not reviews. What you're asking for is op-ed. You're asking for something, basically, that is completely different from a review. Because a review of any product, surely, if it was coming out on the marketplace, would be if it works properly, if it was delivered properly. Was there value for money? Was there longevity? Purely.
That's how you review a phone. That's not how you review a movie.
It's still a product. It's still. Well, this goes down to viewing video games as art. If you want those sort of, it shouldn't be. They should be op-ed pieces. Why aren't these found then as long-form sort of conversations? Why do they have to attach the score to the end of it then? Why can't they just?
Because they have a consumer base that's going to them to find out what was your opinion, what did you rate this game, how did you, and I go there and I do that. If you don't like the reviewers, go to a different website.
Matt,
go listen to the Total Biscuit videos.
Sorry to interrupt. Matt, would you mind if Robin came in and talked? I don't. Yes or no?
That's fine. I mean, I jumped in early. Robin is hard to get a word in with, but.
I'll act as moderator. If I feel like if you're getting dogpiled, I'll jump in, because I do want you to have your say. Because I don't. Because the point of I do like reaching across the aisle and bringing other voices in here. I don't like echo chambers.
The more the merrier, and I love his British accent. So.
All right.
Shit.
He has a better accent than Pigeon.
Fuck you. Just because my voice isn't as deep, you can go fly a kite.
You're just some American from like Kansas or something that's faking it right now.
Oh.
I thank you. To me, you sound like a generic American. You don't even sound like one of the more flattering ones. And I considered Southern flattering, so take that as you will.
I moved around a lot as a kid, and I'm also sick right now, but I have a weird accent, if there is one.
You sound perfectly normal to me, but I'm also American too.
I think the moving around kind of stripped any chance of an accent. So this is like my fundamental disagreement, and I don't really think that game reviews should be, or even can be, this objective thing. Like,
can I respond to that?
I was thinking, like, so you have 1 point if it starts, 2 points if it, or another point if it has multiplayer. 3 points if it has cost to gameplay ratio.
That's very basic. You can still give a review based on longevity, still talking about the plot, for instance, and how one feels about the plot, but it's still grounded in something that will lead to a review score based upon its actual merits as a game, as the gameplay.
So like the Tropico review gets brought up a lot in these conversations. The Tropico review, which I think is Tropico 5 by Polygon, where the reviewer had a problem with feeling like a bully. And the general response that's been presented with to me is, duh, it's a game about a dictator. Of course you're a bully. Why would that even factor in? And I just can't imagine why it wouldn't. If someone is playing a game and they don't necessarily feel comfortable with the role they're playing in it, as long as they're not like
why are they reviewing a strategy? Why are they reviewing a God game then? Because those are fundamentally in each God game. There is basically that's the whole nature of it, even from sort of like RTS level, basically.
Well, so if it's now you're presenting an argument where if you don't like something, don't do it.
No, not necessarily. Remember in old games magazines, they used to have specific people that played specific games that were kind of experts, basically, on their sort of fields.
Well, there's God games where you're not terrible, right? I mean, this is a game where the general purpose is to be a dictator. Like,
yeah, but it is also a game where you can choose, in how you act. You can be a ruthless fascist bastard, or you can create essentially a socialist paradise.
But so the argument is like if they are into that type of game, like they need to find someone better to review that, someone that was more into that type of game. So my argument to respond to that, if you're not into that review site, go find a better review site for you. Walk away from Polygon.
Sorry.
I'm going to not comment too much on here because we have like 4 people in here, so I'm going to take up the role as moderator and not try to interject my opinion. Robin.
I'd be happy to swap.
All right. Well, if you want, I could say more.
Yeah,
Put
please.
me in, coach.
Right.
Yeah.
Hi there, guys. How you doing?
Doing
Hey,
great.
Robin.
I'm just I'm streaming you live as well on my stream while I'm twitching.
Oh my gosh! You said you'd do this.
Well, I I'm that kind of guy. So welcome to my stream as well.
Okay.
Hello.
So some of the comments in the chat are, why would anyone want to read a review of a game by a strategy game by a non-strategy gamer? I don't think that you necessarily would. And if that matters to you, then go to the site with reviews that are doing that. Like, what I don't understand is the anger against sites that are publishing content you don't necessarily like, except in the case of, say, Leigh Alexander's article that was a direct attack. I don't think you have to be a visitor of Gama Sutra to find offense with that. I think Polygon writing about sexualization in Bayonetta shouldn't bother you because Polygon's a very progressively focused website. Why not just avoid it if you're going to have issues with
it's progressively, it's openly progressive now, isn't it? It's,
yes.
Everybody know that
great
now.
That there's sites like that out there for the people that want that site or
A
the
little
people
bit,
that
yeah, but
want to
it's
go
sort
there
of a bit.
and
All
see
of these things
alternate.
are a bit too late. I mean, you
Hey,
can't
guys.
afterwards. That's all.
They didn't need to publish that they were progressive. You could spend 5 minutes on the site before. I always knew it was.
Right.
They haven't exactly hidden it.
Well, what's hiding it to you?
I don't know how you would hide that type of political opinion when other than doing what you guys are saying, which is strip it out completely. That's the only way you could hide it.
Well, that's the whole point of being objective, is it not? Is to strip away your own biases.
So again, I'll say that's my fundamental disagreement with the stuff about reviews. I do not believe nor want a completely objective review.
Can I add?
But you'll never get one. That's the thing. Nobody ever will. We understand that.
It doesn't sound to me like it's the goal is objective reviews. It's reviews that don't include things I don't agree with.
Right. Well,
Okay.
nobody's going to make a review.
If I am someone who
fully agree with.
Does not have, because the argument's never about conservative politics being introduced, but that's probably because there's not examples of it.
Well, that's sort of the point, isn't it?
Or it's maybe that's just status quo.
I mean, may I just say something quickly on the issue of Tropico 5? The reason a lot of people dislike the way that article was written was because you're essentially playing the game in a certain way and then complaining about how you're playing it. Just because you have the ability doesn't to do these things, like embezzlement and assassination, it isn't a requirement. That's kind of that's part of the problem. Is that this is a pretty abhorrent example, at least to me, of someone firstly playing a game away they know they're not going to enjoy it, and then lambasting them for their decisions.
I mean, it starts with embezzlement, human rights violations, the cancellation of the women's right to vote, political assassination. It immediately starts on a negative.
Whereas you can also have the positive, which is another part of Tropico. Like, there are also a lot of powers and a lot of what are they called in Tropico? There's a lot of I don't know, treaties, whatever you'd call it. There's a lot of things you can put in place that are very positive, though you don't see them being mentioned.
You can't just automatically say the way you played it was wrong. If the systems are available to you to play, you play however you want.
But this person feels aggrieved.
That doesn't nullify that person's experience, whether you agree with their experience or not, or whether you think it's relevant to a review or not. It doesn't nullify their experience.
I'm just going to put this one out there.
I want to hear about those experiences. I think they're really interesting. I played a little bit of Tropical 5. I didn't have the time to really put into it, but that review made me go check it out, not hate it.
Matthew, can I ask you a question about your perspective on this?
Yeah.
I'm interested to know, you argue that basically Polygon has a right to inject their personal reviews of bias into their reviews. Now, I have to ask, does that mean that, and you also say that basically reviews can't be objective, they're only subjective, etc. Would you agree that there's a bad way to write a review? That's not necessarily an ethical breach, but it's just a badly written article? Like, the quality is bad?
There is definitely a way to have bad writing skills, but I think someone's personal opinion is not a bad way to write a review. One of my favorite reviews of all time, did you guys ever see this review of the H&M add-on pack for Sims 2? I think it was. I gotta find a picture of this. It's a clothing store add-on pack.
Well, I'm not quite sure whether this idea that the reason that we want to close Polygon down is because it's a bad review site.
Well, what is the reason why you want to close it down?
Well,
so I didn't say that was the only reason. What I was trying to get at before you got on, was that Robin?
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So before
I'm just trying to clarify the argument here, because that's not obviously what Gamergate is about, if you see what I mean.
No, you missed some setup that I was trying to do. Basically, my opinion is that there are tangible ethical violations out there, and there's even worse stuff happening from the corporate angle, like PR and AAA things around reviews. And I know you guys are trying to get into that space investigation-wise. What I was saying is that there's actually more problems than just pure ethics that you guys actually care about, even though the ethics are easier to focus on right now. That one of the problems that people in Gamergate actually care about, whether they admit it themselves or not, is the progressive politic push in a lot of gaming sites. In this very
any actually, you're fine.
earlier.
You'll
in the
find that
second test,
most
it
of
was
people just don't want it there. That's all. Any of it, whether it's for the right or for the left, they don't want any political bias within gaming reviews. It's a bit like reviewing a car and saying I don't like it because a Democrat made it, or I don't like it because a Republican made it.
No, you guys can't really see that. You can. You can do whatever you want. I don't see games as objects. I see games as this entertainment piece that it requires more than just this A/B check. You can't, like it's not.
Well, no, we see it more than that. That's what I mean. And if you're looking at
Reviews is probably the most relatable.
Yeah, but if you use biased political review, you've already sort of tainted your judgment upon it at this point.
Why does it have to be tainted? Why can't you just see that as someone's personal opinion? Everyone's politicized in some way.
Can I put my perspective on the bias angle?
I think that's incorrect. I think most people
your stream.
Yes, yeah, I know it's my stream. I just don't want to interrupt anyone. What was I saying? Right, when it comes to bias in reviews, I think there is a clear push for a certain agenda, and I disagree with you that it's a good thing, and I also disagree that it's not like a breach. Well, you may be technically correct. I have to look. It's not like a breach in ethics, but that's why we say we're against bias and corruption in journalism. This is my perspective. I don't speak for anyone else but me here on this one. When it comes to people pushing an agenda on the reviews, like what they call cultural criticism, stuff like that, I think it's just a bad way to review games. Like, for instance, if you're like judging like a game that's meant to do something, and you don't like that game's function, like saying it's bad because it does the thing well, that doesn't strike me as a good review. For instance, Dead or Alive, that's clearly pandering, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a very specific thing you're getting from a Dead or Alive game, and it's not necessarily fighting.
Yeah. But if you have like if it's something supposed to be like elect emotions of eroticism, for instance, right? I don't see that as inherently bad, and I think saying that it's bad because it's trying to do this thing is just wrong. I think it's just a puritanical system.
And can I just add to that? Really?
It's an opt-in puritanical system. So I agree with.
Hold on, Robin.
Well, there's this one bit that seems to be missing from the debate. That's all, and it's the Metascore.
We're not missing that. I was just about to say that. Other than the point being made about the Metacritic score, which Metacritic should exist, I think, but it's the problem that is really there is that publishers have the audacity to tie that back. Like, that is not a problem with games journalism. That is a problem with publishers being kind of assholes.
I'd agree and disagree with that. Like, I'd agree in the sense that, yeah, it's a terrible way to pay your employees based on, well, maybe it isn't terrible, but basically, I don't think it's good to your employees to like basically say that if the scores aren't good enough, then you don't get your bonus or whatever.
It should be the sales, if anything.
Yeah, it should be the sales. That would be a better meter to measure whether or not your employees get a bonus, because that's just business sense. The thing is, though, I think that the journalists have like come in part and parcel with that agreement. And honestly, I believe that game review scores have become so hyped up, it's become to the point of useless that I have to defer to Visca on this one. We should just axe them. And also, I would also argue that if you believe that reviews are inherently subjective and striving for objectivity is useless, then you must conclude that adding a score to a game, because a score is an objective number, is pointless and shouldn't be done. And would you agree with that?
I tried to raise that point earlier.
No, I think scores are kind of weird. It's a remnant of an old system, but it's also, that's not a problem that is easily solved. And most of the complaints I hear about reviews are in their text from Gamergate, not necessarily the end score. Like I know if there wasn't a score at all, then they wouldn't contribute to Metacritic, and then that argument would go away. But would it change the fact that you don't necessarily like reviews that inject their personal politics? I don't think it would change that at all. I don't like scores, but I also don't. I personally do not have the solution for what to do. I know, like I've approached this from different kind of angles entirely. Like how to explain to someone that a restaurant is good locally without sort of giving it a star system in a web app, and it's really difficult to try to give that snapshot opinion about anything. And right now, there's not really a better solution out there than these silly scores.
Well, I would agree that to act scores, you'd have to make a change to the industry in that sense. But I think that the solution is basically journalists to just stand up and just say, hey, you know what? We're not going to do the scores because they're not useless to our customers. Like whether you fall in our camp where we believe that striving into objectivity is paramount, or your camp where you believe that striving for objectivity is a wasted exercise, or rather you don't believe in objectivity in reviews, then it doesn't help a consumer because like every game's going to get like the lowest score you'll see is a 6, essentially, in most cases. So it's kind of ridiculous at this point.
So the lowest score you'll see is a 6.
No. Here's the thing. It's the lowest score you'll see from a heavily marketed, heavily pushed game. There's the difference.
Okay,
it seems that games that are open to criticism and that are fair game are ones from indie developers that don't really have much of a chance. They don't have these connections. However, when you have
hold on, Pigeon. We are reaching the end of the hour, but I am going to extend it by a few more, by about another 15 minutes because Robin showed up. So continue.
Bless you.
Yeah, you threw me off. Fuck.
Well, I'm going to leave early because Robin joined. I freaking hate that guy. So.
That's
Be nice.
Okay.
Why do you hate me, mate?
Because I'm a big fan of Pigeon.
Just a bit of strong sort of, hate. Just some guy here. You're a strong fan of Polygon, so you hate me.
No, I really like Ordinary Pigeon, and your British accent is blowing him out of the water, and I don't like it.
I just like everything about you, Matt. It's okay.
Did you want to go to a separate hangout? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, I think there's been a proposition.
Pigeon.
Turn your camera on.
What? This just got a lot very homoerotic very quickly.
Oh, don't joke yourself. You wanted it to go this way. Where's the baby oil?
Back on topic, please.
Right. So did I get? I don't know how much time left, but prior to Robin joining, I was trying to just set the idea that Gamergate is about general frustration with stuff that's happening and not about a specific thing.
Well,
it is about the fact that those Women versus Tropes video came out and they pointed out all this stuff without an alternate view. It is about politics in reviews. It is about the relationships that.
Sorry, that last. Hold on, I gotta cut you off. That last statement you made about Gamergate being about like Anita's videos that have come out. I find that factually wrong. So. I don't know where you're coming off with that. Like, could you explain a little more nuanced?
All right. The reason why I say that is because I've been joining these streams for a while now, and she comes up a lot, and the fact that her videos are wrong and kind of bad come up a lot. I think that is a belief that is strong within Gamergate.
Right. Do you think that that's the reason for it, though? Just by saying,
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying
people who believe in God think that these people over here are really bad because they don't believe in God. Can you see how it works? Well, they do believe in God, just not the same God as me.
I'm not saying that is the reason GG started. I'm saying there is a lot more belief out there that GG is holding than just game journalisms need to reveal their sources and quit colluding.
Right.
That there is a fundamental problem with a lot of other stuff, and it goes beyond just that. So,
Of course.
like, you guys need to start
Yeah.
addressing that more. Like that, the progressive politics in reviews. Everyone on this stream doesn't want them in there, except for me.
Yeah. So basically, as with progressive policies, of course, you would understand that democracy rules on that sort of front. So, ad populum, you should change your opinion based on the fact that more of us believe it than you. Deal?
No, I think I should keep going to stuff that provide it.
Now this is where it gets weird. You see, now we've got to the point of saying, well, okay, well, then really what's going on is we've got some people who have gained popularity through magazines without saying that they were progressive beforehand or after. Now they've suddenly decided to do so. It's a bit odd.
Polygon has always been that way. I don't know where that's coming from. I think Kotaku shifted over time, but still has some weird kind of stuff coming from there, like.
So you're saying Polygon was a politically laden magazine right from the word go?
And that is not the case. That is not the case, and I can testify.
Forgive me. Who's echoing?
No,
Not myself.
Oh.
Either way, like Polygon hasn't been. You were painting a picture where they like hid this political opinion and then suddenly brought it out over the last year or two or whatever, and I don't think that's true.
So how long do you think it's taken for them to bring it out?
I don't know. I honestly have always considered them that way, so I don't really understand. And then there's individuals like Giant Bomb, Patrick Klepek. As long as he's been there, he's always felt very progressive to me. But he's also a great source for these indie games that aren't being connected through relationships. He talks about his worth playing segment covers a lot of games that are getting covered because of his discovery process versus a relationship, which is really kind of a solution to the problem that a lot of gamergaters are describing, which is you can only get coverage if you have a personal or friendly relationship.
Well, you'd expect, say, the GNC to be impartial, wouldn't you?
The what?
Well, the Game Developer Conference.
GDC?
GDCs. What did I say? Sorry.
GNC.
I'm sorry.
It would be nice, but I would. In an ideal world, I would love that. But I know how things like this come together, and I don't believe that they are. I don't believe that that's the case right now.
So in other words, because so you prefer it to be not nice.
I didn't say that. I would prefer it to be more impartial. But I also know that there's a huge discovery problem. Like how many games are made per day? Like released per day? It's crazy. How do you discover all that? How do you sift through it?
That's why we have these people called journalists who are supposed to sort through all this lot.
But where's the list of all games submitted today? Where's that list for them to go through? You know, like as a freelancer, I need to get work. I have to network with people in order to discover opportunities, and that's the same sort of situation that happens in every industry, including how do I find out about these cool games that are coming out? Oh, my roommate just made one. I mean, that's the situation that happened with Ananthropy. My roommate's a game maker, and I'm going to talk about their games on the indie games posts.
Yeah, but that...
In addition to that, Ananthropy already had some fame for their games, not prior to that relationship.
Yeah, there's so much wrong with that.
Ben?
There's so much wrong with that. I don't even know where to begin.
Those are the types of relationships that should absolutely be disclosed, and I believe in that tenet of gaming.
No, but Stephen Tortillo doesn't really. So
I'm not Stephen Tortillo.
Yeah, you're coming from the narrative that is in defense of Stephen Tortillo.
I never defended Kotaku about anything.
Well, what's the difference then if a Polygon writer does it?
No, I am on board with the fact that these relationships need to be disclosed.
Yeah, and so far, we've had mostly a fuck you. Have we not?
I believe a lot of ethics policies were updated to reflect that, particularly including things that are done via Pigeon.
Beginning to reflect.
If I'm going to respond to that argument, it's one thing to say that you're going to update your ethical practices.
It's a wait and see, right?
Huh?
It's got to be a wait and see. Like, do they actually follow through?
That's the thing with this. With the whole Gamergate thing, there's the problem is it's not a matter of like wait and see. It's a matter of it's too little, too late. Like, yeah, you updated your ethical policies, but you didn't give any sort of apology. You didn't give any kind of a reprimand. You didn't show in practice how you're going to change. So at this point, our perspective is we need to keep going and keep fighting these people until they change, until they have to surrender. Not in those literal terms, but essentially we can't stop, like, you know, Operation Disrespect.
It's more of a message, really, to people in the wider journalistic circles as well.
Yeah.
Because, to be honest with you, you know, you say, well, you know, that's just the way it is. And it's, well, yeah, that is the way it is. And basically, you're now PR. You know, you're no longer journalists. You're no longer finding out whether things are right or wrong. You're just basically deciding what the boss tells you. Depending on his political bent, he's going to hire in his political way. And then you just get political magazines. I'm quite happy for people to have political magazines, but when they're basically reviewing something like games, they're supposed to review games.
So just earlier you were saying it's not about that. And I was trying to say that is one of the frustrations.
No, that is. Look, you're talking to me about the various problems that are in the gaming world. This is one of them. There are plenty of problems in the gaming world. One of them being, of course, people putting their political agenda ahead of their actual review. Now, if that,
right. I don't believe it's an ethical problem. I believe
that's your belief system that's the problem, perhaps, but. You know, when it comes down to it, you're looking at something that customers are supposed to find out about. Now, if they're giving 10s out of 10s for something that they politically motivated to actually do, what's going to happen? You get all of these sales. Yay! And then you get a load of pissed off people with all of these sales. Well, then the sales are done. Hey-ho. They've already made the money. Journalists are supposed to be the stopgap.
Robin, let Matthew speak,
the customer. I was just, you know, making a point here, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. So the 10 out of 10 that Polygon gave to Gone Home.
For anything. Bizarre.
Gone Home was specifically brought up the other night in this stream, or not this one, but a related one, that it didn't sell for shit. It only sold like 250K or something like that. But that got a politically motivated 10 out of 10 out of Polygon.
Brilliant. So do you prefer to be lied to? Is that what you mean?
I
like Polygon so much?
I bought and enjoyed that game.
And it got a 10 out of 10. Do you think it deserved a 10 out of 10?
No, I wouldn't have given it a 10 out of 10.
So once again, that was a bit of a, you know, when you come down to it, you were expecting a 10 out of 10 game when you didn't get it, did you?
No, I read the review and I was expecting, and I got exactly what I was expecting. A good story about something.
10 out of 10. What does 10 out of 10 mean at this point?
It means something that I like. That's the problem.
If I may, like, what was it? Well, I don't think Gone Home getting a 10 out of 10 is an example of like the AAA corruption. It's more of the indie side of things. And that, although given the relationships of the journalists and the collusion, you can see why a 10 out of 10 for Gone Home is highly suspect. And getting that game getting all this praise is also highly suspect. So you can see why we really can't trust Polygon right now because of the Game Journal Pro's email leaks and other evidence of corruption in the gaming sphere, including the fact that Patricia Hernandez did give positive press coverage to Gone Home. isn't it possible she may have told other people to go ahead and promote it due to the collusion factor?
I think you mean Danielle Riendeau of Polygon, and not Patricia Hernandez of Kotaku.
Yeah.
For Gone Home, because she has ties to the Idle Thumbs crew. Is that the thread you're on?
Well, yeah, basically, I like, how do we trust like any reviews given the collusion with the Game Journal Pro's email leak that came out? Like, for all we know, they decide, well, I think it would be a good idea to promote Gone Home because it promotes a good social message, this regardless of the content of the game. And if they're all agreement with this bias, then essentially they can just promote the Gone Home without actually giving it without actually giving a proper review from their perspective.
I think that's a reasonable question. I think that what has been exposed is the potential for collusion of that level, and I think that's concerning. I don't know that there's been proof provided of, score manipulation based off this Game Journal's Pro list, and I think I like to side with, I try to believe people are a little bit better than that, but until proven otherwise. I think that what we've seen with Game Journal's pros list is that there are like-minded individuals that have this progressive politics at multiple sites. I think that we've seen that what to do about staff and other issues has been discussed, and recommendations by completely unrelated companies have been made in regards to the Destructoid thing. And I think that it is very likely that some discussions happened around the Gamers Are Dead stuff prior to release. I think that the timing on some of that stuff might be just too tight for it to be organic.
Well,
But I don't know that I've seen actual proof of that. But I still think that you're probably right that there is conversation. But I don't know that they're using it to manipulate scores across the board.
Why not when we've seen corruption in other places? Why do you take for granted then that that is a holy grail that can't be, impeached?
Just a heads up, we're kind of out of time, but I'm going to extend it so that we can finish the thread of this conversation. And once we're done talking this particular point, I'm going to end the stream. So continue.
No, we can be done. We're not really going to get anywhere, I don't think.
I wouldn't say that. Make your point.
I think I was being rebutted at the time.
Okay.
I would like to make a point about something. I hope you'd actually at least gone through the business with Not Your Shield. Do you sort of understand the sentiment behind this particular hashtag, mate?
Yes, Robin, you probably don't remember because you do these a lot, but I actually joined your stream, a stream that you were on a few weeks ago, and Logical was in, and a couple other Not Your Shield members.
Yeah, so you understand the sort of sentiment there. Is that generally speaking, there's a lot of gamers out there as well that are sick and tired of people basically, picking on their mates. Because if you can imagine, all of these people that have just been put into the Not Your Shield category, the Gamergate category, but Not Your Shield, these sort of people are basically being picked on because they're white heterosexual males, for example. They seem to be the key demographic here that's being attacked. For no apparent reason.
Well, I'm a full disclosure. I'm a white straight male, so
yeah. And
I don't personally
imagine out of a grouping when it comes to gaming and stuff like that, we've always been rather inclusive, in the same sense that we generally say to somebody, "So, what's your name? Where are you from? What do you do?" All that sort of business, and then we go, "Cool. What character do you like?" That's generally, we don't really care if you've got, if you're missing a limb. We don't care if you're, anything. It doesn't matter. Sex, orientation, doesn't matter at all. Just want to play games with you. It is that simple. And these people know us very, very well. And they feel rather defensive of their friends who are being picked on for no apparent reason. You can see that sort of sentiment coming out from them. This is some people who've decided to have a cultural war against their own culture. Allegedly. Although, seeing as this particular culture is commanding about $80 billion and up to 100 in revenue these days, it is a somewhat lucrative culture to be sort of stuck into. And if you can imagine the people that have lived within this culture almost their entire lives in some cases.
Well, I
feel
don't
a bit
have to
precious
imagine it. I am
towards it.
one of them.
Well, yeah, we feel a bit precious towards it. And one of the great things about this place is it's always been inclusive. So it's a little bit sort of hypocritical for someone to turn around and kind of go, let's lose the loser. Do you know what I mean?
I agree that that is one of Gamergate's frustrations.
But that's really more not your Shield's frustrations, really, if you think about it, because that's their friends that they're talking about.
Yeah, there's the coming to the aid mentality that you're advocating from them, but
well, they've played alongside them, you know. They've helped them out plenty of times. You know, these are compadres. This isn't damsels in distress. It's like, what are you doing? I'll back you up, son.
All right.
That's the thing, you know. And you know, we've been picked on before. I mean, I'm an old gamer. I know what people used to think of our hobby before. We're used to people not liking us or, you know, treating us as though we're pieces of shit. We can handle that. It's the collusion that we're worried about, because it basically taints the perception of these games. So, you know, the wonderful thing about good games is that the best people get the attention. That's the whole point. Good games mean that the best people get the best attention. But if people are concentrating on what their friends are doing rather than what everybody's doing and finding out what the best stuff is, nobody knows what's good anymore.
I just have a point to put towards about Polygon. Wouldn't you like to see Ben Katura, instead of stoking the fires, coming down and talking to gamers, you know, about their problems? You know, if he is a gamer, if he cared about his, you know, demographic, because, you know, it's supposed to be for all, you know, games. That's what their message is. You know, that they're all inclusive.
I would not want Ben Kuchera speaking for me. I've never been a particular.
Wouldn't you want him to speak to people, gamers, and maybe put his side across?
I don't really care about Ben Kuchera.
But I
don't think you'd like your conversation with him personally. He's kind of aggressive.
Okay, but he represents Polygon.
He's a member of Polygon.
Okay, so can you see it?
Well, there's a ton of reporters that are on Polygon. I don't necessarily buddies with all of them.
What does this
mean?
I
appreciate
I don't know what you mean. That he works for Polygon, does he not?
Yes.
Okay, so
he is
I
not
don't know about you, mate, but when you're in your job and you were to speak on your sort of chosen subject to work in and live in, you don't think that's going to be a little bit interconnected?
It would be, because I am the face of my company, but as just an employee of a company, I don't think that they are the thing, but some of their public speaking can be tied back to it, obviously. They do have some representative power.
Yeah.
Well, they're supposed to be our voices, are they not? They're supposed to represent the best in gaming, surely.
Oh, you're saying games journalists are supposed to represent the best in gaming?
Oh, so they're not then?
I don't think. Well, what does that
reviewing the best in gaming? That would be the real point. That's what they're there to do, is to find the very best that they can and review it.
They are personalities that you go to, just like any other media. I don't understand how they are like supposed to be held to be like this benevolent, above reproach writer like that. Is it even possible?
Yes, it's perfectly possible.
I agree with some of the ethical violations, like non-disclosure, and particularly I hate the way PR and AAA stuff is handled. PR, like paying for game events and stuff like that for reviews. I think those are terrible practices. But
and it's nice to see that journalists who have done that in the past have been fired from that position. Yes.
I don't know what you're specifically talking about.
What fire? So if these people are basically guns for hire as such, and that's, obviously these people know about this sort of thing. I mean, they've probably seen it. Now that they understand that, we don't want to hear that sort of thing, they've obviously made reparations, yes?
I don't know of any example of what you're. I'm not sure what you're getting at.
Well, I was just wondering, that would have been a good point to go forward with, surely, if they were really serious about that sort of thing. There's got to be some
like
defenders out there.
Polygon went to a review event for Call of Duty Ghosts, I believe it was, and they actually posted an article talking about that event and the situation that was around it. Is that should that guy be fired in retrospect for having gone to that review event?
Well, no. I mean, that's actually rather nice. Somebody actually reviewing what goes on in these sort of things. That gives people a great insight into it.
Okay, so
I'm talking about the review of a game. I'm not talking about reviewing an incident.
Assuming he didn't, assuming someone went to one of these review events that you basically have to agree to in order to get the early review copy, they should now be fired for having done that? Is that what you're
going to a review event and writing about it? No.
No.
Matthew, your mic's muted.
I'm sick and I have to keep muting my mic for coughs. Sorry.
That's just okay.
No. Say it's a completely different event. They didn't talk about the nature of the event at all. They just reviewed the game in that environment. Are you saying now, after the fact, they should be punished?
No, I think they should write about the fact that that's happened to them too. Absolutely. I think they should actually put that as part of the review, so people can understand what you actually went through in order to get that review in the first place. Personally, that would be a more objective look at it, because it would actually help people understand what someone's trying to do in order to actually get a good review.
All right.
Part of the review, yes.
All right. On that note, we're like an hour and a half into this, and I only intended for this segment to go for an hour. Robin wanted to go on, so I made special exceptions to that, which is fine.
Thank you.
Yeah. Before we go, though, I'd like to ask Matthew like a couple of questions. At least one question. Matthew, you were like a progressivist type of person, right? That's why you like progressivist type of things, right?
Yes, I am, and I also, as much as I find to agree with on Polygon, I also find plenty to disagree with, and I enjoy that aspect as well. But okay, I do consider myself a fairly progressive person.
Okay,
I think you called it Bay Area mentality earlier.
I wouldn't say you've gone full Macintosh yet. I mean, you are quite reasonable, to be honest.
Well, anyway. There's always that potential. Keep yourself in check.
Yes.
I have to hold it in.
Well, Matthew, I'm sorry if I sounded heated at all. It just wasn't the type of conversation that I was expecting, and it just felt like we were going back to day dot. So I do apologise.
Yeah, same on my behalf as well. I hope you had enjoyed the conversation.
I started trying to take the explain your stuff to me, because I wanted to make sure I was in the room with the people I thought I was, and not much because I didn't know any of that. Sorry.
No, it's perfectly fine. I understand. I mean, to be honest, if this had been the conversation that I thought it would have been, I think some of my points might have been more nuanced and fleshed out. But some of the points felt like we were dealing with day one again. And
yes, we get it. I mean, we've got Sargon Stormman, Robin's Fluffer, and a Panda on the show. I know, we're not the biggest of people within Gamegate. It's okay.
Yeah.
I have one more. I have one last question for Matthew because I think he answered the question. I was going to add a follow-up question to that one because I'm glad that he is critical of even though he is a progressivist and he likes reading progressivist things. I appreciate that he is at least critical of the things he reads. Another question. You said that you agreed with us on some points, right? Would you stand by? Would that technically make you a neutral on Gamergate, or are you still anti-consider yourself, or would you even stand by us on those points that you would think we're right on?
I do not believe in your tactics for solving the points. I do not agree that you should go after a website's advertisers when all you really should be doing, in my opinion, is just not visiting that website. I think you guys are actually silencing free speech in some cases, even is shitty free speech. If Sam Biddle's an idiot and says something about bullying, I kind of don't really care about Sam Biddle because he's probably an idiot, but I also see the mentality where that shouldn't be allowed.
The difference there is we're not silencing free speech. We're silencing what we consider hate speech towards gamers.
No, wait.
Hold on.
I totally understand.
Hold on. Let's not turn this into an argument.
We're not
No, it's
silencing. We're not silencing anyone really. I mean, these people have shown us that they're really trying to silence us.
Can I just say my point?
To others, really, that you don't do that.
It isn't about silencing free speech. It's about being held accountable to what you say. The thing is you're allowed to say whatever you want. Just expect some of it to get you in trouble.
These are the sort of tactics that these sort of people use themselves. We're just using it against them.
All right. To complete my thought, I was saying even though I totally understand why someone would object to what Sam Biddle said and why you would take the initiative to go after it, and I think that's admirable. I don't really give a shit about Sam Biddle. That's my only thing. But where it starts to get weird is I keep bringing up Polygon as a case because it seems to be the most easily understood case where they haven't really said anything like that at all, like Sam Biddle did. They haven't really jumped in on that end, and I don't.
Ben Kachura called us all creationists, and he wasn't going to give us the time of day.
Well, see, that's not the same as hey, bring back bullying. That's a blanket statement, and
very dismissive.
Both sides are making blanket dismissive statements. John said earlier, the Bay Area mentality, and that's a blanket dismissive statement. And John's one of the more kind of even-keeled guys I've talked to in Gamergate.
Well, he's not done very well, is he? He's not managed to diffuse the situation particularly well, has he?
Let me diffuse it.
I don't think
let me diffuse it. Matt, did you? Let me diffuse it. First off, as when I say Bay Area culture, I'm referring to a certain concern troll or sensitive culture mentality, where basically there's a tendency for other people to speak for other people, and also police everyone involved.
I know what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. But you are using a term that references an entire geographical population, right? Your term is based off a geographical location, which has a variety of people in it.
Oh yeah, there's trolls like that all over the world.
I'm not saying you're a bad person for doing that. It actually expressed something that I immediately understood what you meant.
Okay. I never mean to blanket statement. That's my only issue with that.
Statements on both sides.
Yeah, there is some of that. I usually just call the opposition because calling them all SJWs is a little inaccurate. Not all of them are concern trolls. But anyway, we're out of time, so I just like to thank Matthew for being on the show. He's been, even though he's an anti, he's still been a great guest, and I'd like to have him again and maybe debate more topics with him.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex. It was great. Worst guest ever. 2 out of 10, Polygon.
8 out of 10, Polygon.
All right. Robin, do you want to have anything to say before we go?
He just started up the Evil Within demo, so I think he's being a bit barraged by shitty optimization at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Um. Anyway, I
This
think
one,
this show was a success so far. There was a big major spaghetti drops at the beginning of the show because, honestly, due to my lack of planning. But to be fair, it went well anyway. So I thought we had I thought our 3 segments were good. The last segment kind of dragged on a little too long. Would you agree with that?
I don't think so, personally, and
I think these
I
things are dead.
yeah, I mean it's nice to have a constraint on time, especially when you have a plethora of guests on afterwards, of course. But when you're getting towards the end of it, if a conversation hasn't wrapped up, it's not necessary to just boot them off just because we hit an hour mark. But what's the chat saying? Let me just ask the chat if they have any questions for us before we go.
Yeah, I don't want to go past the 4-hour mark because that screws up YouTube.
What are we on at the moment?
Let me check. We're at the
3:38.
we got 20 minutes. So, any questions for me, Robin, Pigeon, Cerebus?
I gained like 3 followers during this entire thing. I'm kind of becoming a big deal.
There were a few questions that came through to me a bit too late, and during the heated sort of nature of the conversation, unfortunately, as it turned out to be, they didn't get addressed. Dash messaged me a couple of times wanting to just say, where was it, Dash? Please point out the fact that game sites attacked gaming communities in the past. And there was another chap who posted something about Christian Gamer that GG has applauded that website because it's managed to separate its beliefs from objective reviews, which shows that it can be done, basically.
Someone in chat asked why, by the name of Captain Pikeman, why hasn't any company responded in pulling ads lately?
I would say because I don't know. They don't want to pull ads. I can't answer for them. More streams on. I believe. Does Blackface Kermit still have a stream up, or Whiskey Grenade?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't check those other, big guys.
Robin has a stream up. I can link you that one.
Yeah, well, no, that's a Twitch stream. It's a bit different.
Okay.
But what was it? We can. Oh yeah, no shilling. Let's chill. Let's go full chill mode.
You guys want to do another episode next week?
Of course.
Yeah, we're up for a new episode. I just want to thank those that retweeted us. Sargon gave us a good retweet, as did Logical. As did.
Gave us a retweet. Oh shit. Nepotistic as fuck.
Yeah, totally nepotistic. I got to use my media contacts and all. Otherwise, we'd have been stuck at 13 viewers.
You start, fucker. You start.
I pimped it out to my other group as well. So I'd like to thank Code and Dropping Plates, Jeremy, and we'll be on a stream later on. And if people want to come along to that, they can do. It's this evening. I think it'll be in about 30 minutes time actually, which means I'm going to be fucking unconscious through it. If people want to check it out, it's follow at CodeGrit on Twitter, and he will be posting a link to the live stream.
And Gwen tweeted it out a lot. Thank you very much, Gwen. We did really well for a first stream. Holy shit! Aside from John's fucking Amish ability with computers.
Yeah, I just want to thank Gwen. She is amazing.
Well. Oh yeah, I love her work. I love what she does.
And Sour Grapes came in as well, so that's from their clique there. So.
Oh yeah, Sour Grapes is also awesome.
Yeah.
Don't you think Metacritic or review scores based on progressive subjective opinions is the real problem? Asks Lost and Found. Yeah, I don't think if you're going to subscribe to the mentality that objectivity is bullshit, then don't add numbers which are objective to your scores, to your reviews.
Yeah, which is what I said like hours ago. There was the way that the Polygon article finished on Tropico, which I didn't manage to, was just purely not based on any of the sort of mechanical.
It's so fucking stupid. Like, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I hate more in reviews. Like, it's like playing Fallout 3 and then complaining that you just shot the entire town because it promotes like mass shootings. You know, it's like, oh, I did something that I didn't have to do. Oh, I'm really upset about this. What the fuck?
Jeremy, my Twitter is the second one down on the description, Curbs101.
Yeah, but you're missing the best one there. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, the shit English accent apparently.
Yeah, Ordinary Pigeon you can find at Ordinary Pigeon at Twitter. Cerebus, KERBS Cerebus. Why do you spell your name with a K?
Because if you've ever watched some Japanese movies, oh for fuck's sake, I haven't watched them in so long, I've forgotten the titles. Basically, it's a Japanese spelling of Cerberus. Well, it does exist. It's just another spelling of Cerberus, basically.
No. TLDR, he's just a weeaboo.
I am a weeaboo. I'm lacking a hug pillow. A full body pillow. If somebody wants to provide me with one of those, you can, as I say, contact me by Twitter. I really need to hug something. Please. I'm so sad.
Please respond.
Please.
Yes. You can find me at jkellytwit, and also you can find me at sockpuppettwit. If you follow the Sockpuppet Twit account, that will avoid all the retweets. So if you happen to be anti-Gamergate and don't want to see a bunch of propaganda pop up in your Twitter stream, feel free to follow that one instead of my other one. If anyone would like to come on the show as a guest, they're more than welcome to, regardless of their position.
Yeah, contact us on Twitter, and we'll see about getting you on.
Yeah, just send me, Pigeon, or Cerebus a tweet, and we'll see about it. All right.
Yeah, not during the actual show though, because
yes, we're wrapping up.
We have a format, so.
Any closing thoughts, guys?
9/11 was an inside job.
I fucking hate Polygon. No. Polygon can exist. I'm just not going to look at it.
Polygon can exist. I just hope it goes fuck itself. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of with. Some days I feel like with Rockstar, burn it all. Other days I'm like, you know what? There's hope, and I'd rather be hopeful.
I hope they all step on Legos.
I hope they don't attach. I hope their scores do not impact Metacritic, studios, jobs. I mean, that Fallout team doesn't exist anymore, doesn't it? Because it missed that one point.
Yep.
Yeah,
the studio exists, I think, but they were going. I'm pretty sure they were going to make another Fallout game if they got the bonus essentially. And
it causes a lot of instability to people's jobs and livelihoods, and these reviewers do hold a lot of that power in their hands. So maybe they should think about that.
Yeah, I also believe that there should be some objective standards for reviews, where there are certain rules you have to follow in order to make the review. I'd get more into that, but we're out of time. If you want to check out more Gamergate-related stuff, if you haven't already, be sure to look in the description. We weren't able to talk about these on the show because we skipped the pre-show. David Packman has been doing a great job interviewing people surrounding Gamergate. Watch those interviews. They're amazing. We're also, well, I think that's about it. That wraps it up. And enough spaghetti dropping. Let's just say goodbye. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Hello.
Have a good night.